Yes, sir.
Let's chat.
Yes, bye.
Episode 18. We're here right now with the man himself, the myth, the legend, Colin Grant. How you doing, man?
What's going on, bye? Good to see you, man.
Great to have you on.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys having me last minute, you know?
Well, that was the thing, because I was like, he would be a good guest, and then I messaged you, and I was like, we usually do it on Sundays. You're like, well, the next Sunday I'd be available is September 12th, and you're like, unless you could do this Sunday, and I was like, perfect. We have no guests scheduled in the future at all right now, so
there you go.
Let's get this man on here.
She was meant to be by.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I guess we'll just jump right into this.
Yeah, man.
How have you been?
Can't complain, man. It's been wacky all year. Like, I don't know about yourself, but yeah, in music, like, I feel like the best way to describe this past year has been weird, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there have been, challenges, but out of those have come some good things that may not have happened otherwise, if we hadn't been cooped up at home with time to create a little bit on our hands. And I dare say, like, I'm doing okay, like, all things considered, and it's kind of been nice this past, like, 3 weeks to see things opening up again and people getting on the go again. And the people are basically looking to cram 2020 worth of gigs into August and September right now, so the phone hasn't stopped ringing, and
wow.
I can't complain. It's a good problem to have,
Yeah, you work at quite the pace, eh? Like, you travel like constantly almost, right?
I travel, not this past year, I guess, but as often as I can. I've been lucky to get to travel lots of cool places, and this past little while, going to Halifax feels like going to a foreign country,
right.
Which is kind of crazy, but the Atlantic bubble has been good to me in the meantime, and fingers crossed it won't be long before we'll be branching out a little further to our buds south of the border, and maybe out west again soon.
Is that where the money's at for you touring, like in the States, or?
It kind of depends on what you're looking for. There's a great folk and Celtic festival circuit in the U.S. and in Canada as well. Just like the concentration of it is busier south of the border. Like, you could go and play Celtic festivals within like the Midwest states for probably 6 to 8 weeks running. Wow. If you wanted to. I've never gone that hard. For a lot of the festivals that I'll do, I'll end up going as a one-off, probably like yourself, where you fly in on a Thursday and fly home on a Sunday or Monday and have a rip. But across Canada, like flying out to Ontario, playing a few things, flying out to Alberta, playing a few things. I feel like the days of like ripping across the country and back are like have changed slightly, even since like 2009. The only time I ever did that was with Tom Fun Orchestra,
right? And
we went to Nanaimo, BC, and back to Newfoundland
driving in
the month of February.
Ew.
And we ran into snow like one time just by accident. It was very lucky.
That's very lucky. Yeah, no doubt.
February.
So
should be all snow.
When you're playing in the States, is it mostly like northeast states? Because I know that I feel like when I was talking to Mickey, sometimes he would say you were in like I don't know if it was like Cape Cod or like down around that area, like the Maine, New Hampshire.
Yeah, like Maine and New Hampshire are kind of like our maritime cousins, just slightly southerly removed. Mm-hmm. And New Hampshire and Maine has been really good to my friends and I, and Milwaukee Irish Fest is another festival that's been really good to us. I would love to get to California sometime, but I've never been.
You've never been? Me either.
To play, and Texas I've never been to. But
okay.
You got to rip down there too, though, eh?
South by Southwest, I did that 5 years ago. It's crazy to think, but definitely. I don't know if that would be essentially the festival that you would be looking into playing. I'm sure that there's something for like traditional music at that festival, as it's a huge festival. But that was pretty cool. Just going anywhere really, just to play music. I love the opportunity to network and stuff and get further opportunities from that. But just to see new places is, that's fun.
And, for all the trials and tribulations that our American cousins have had in the past little while, there's so many sweet, like, genuine music-loving people down there that, like, I'm really looking forward to going back down to play for. And I think there will come a time, like, the work visa and tax process gets a little tangly when it comes to touring down there, but it's always worth it. And yeah, they're always a receptive audience for sure.
Definitely. And I know that you mentioned when you go and travel to perform, you say, like, if you're going somewhere into the States doing a festival, you sometimes have to, like, it's very strict when you're getting those performer visas, right? You go down, and I think that was me.
It might be me.
Sorry, bud. Oh, it's all good. I feel like it might have been me. Yep, it was me.
All good.
But there's very strict guidelines that you have to abide by when you're doing that, right? Thankfully, whenever I went down to perform in the States, like, there wasn't like I was getting paid a substantial amount of money. If anything, I'd probably spend more money to just go down there for the opportunity. But don't you typically have to, like, you have to apply for those visas every time you go down, or I forget how that works. You get the performer's visa, and then it's kind of covers any time you have a gig south of the border, but you have to be back once you're, like, the day after you're done performing.
That's it. Yeah, they're it's pretty strict about your date of entry and your date of exit, and without getting too much into the red tape of it, like, they definitely have made the process harder, and in some cases, like, the gigs just can't be booked in time to apply for the work visa itself. Like, you need to have, like, 60 days or sometimes up to 90 days notice for Uncle Sam. And sometimes not all the gigs come in. I know bands that will get visas for, like, a long span of time to work down there, and they know they have this gig and they know they have this gig, and all the other gigs that are in between are contracts that don't end up happening. And that's, like, doesn't feel super, like, honest to go about it that way, but it's the way that the visa process has kind of forced musicians to say, we're working here, and here, and that gig fell through. But they have these two book-ended gigs that are definitely going to happen, so you can, like, it's a tangly application process, and they're not making it easier by the year. So
and I would imagine with just the additional restrictions that come just traveling in the first place with COVID, it's just going to make it more complicated, because you don't know if that show might get canceled, and you have to apply for the visa as well. Like, is there any scenario where it doesn't get approved?
There are scenarios where there can be hiccups. I've been lucky that all the visas I've applied for have been approved, but I've run into issues where say band members that weren't able to attend or had other gigs come up for them have to be switched out and subbed out, showing up at the border and praying that they're not going to turn away two different names that aren't on the visa. Like, we'll come equipped with everything they've been told us to come with, but like, I appreciate the Department of Homeland Security has a mountain of things that they would have to deal with, but, like, I'd like to think that a couple of musicians coming in for a few gigs would be the least of their problems. It all depends on what guard you get and whether they're having a good day or a bad day.
Right. There must be a lot of musicians as well that just might book a few one-off shows in the States and just get paid under the table and just say they're going down there for leisure purposes and dip back home.
That's a tangle too, man. I know musicians that have tried that approach, and all it takes is one Facebook post or a Google post to let the cat out of the bag, and they will Google you in the customs office, and they will find you if you have a gig or has somebody that has put your name on a poster or a Facebook post.
Well, I guess there's the promotional aspect of it too. Like, if you're someone that has any form of notoriety, there's a very high chance that there'll be some legal inspection.
As soon as you've gotten one visa, there's no
right, exactly. If you did it, if you went through the the correct process one time,
Yeah.
they could see that when you're coming back in and be skeptical if you did a gig or not.
Exactly. Now, there could be different ones if it's a Canadian entity paying you. That is a thing sometimes where we've gone on, like, things promoting Tourism Nova Scotia or whatever, and we'll go to Milwaukee Irish Fest and play, but it's a Canadian entity paying us, not the Americans. So that is a different category
Right, because
of
that's
visa.
the whole reason you have to apply for the visa is because it's an American company that's
still need a
paying
visa
and
for
they're
that?
taxing.
You still need a form of a visa, but it's like slightly less paperwork, and it doesn't cost as much. So
It
it's
seems like it doesn't even.
the
I don't
ideal
see why you would
situation.
even need one.
I'm cracking this bad boy.
Try everybody.
Oh, jeez.
What kind's that one there now?
This dude, shout out to Ryan at the NSLC. I went there yesterday and I was like, show me some. Let me try something new, and it's called. I guess they should sponsor us now. I don't even know how do you read that. Something reality. Malternate reality. That makes sense.
Alternate
reality.
reality.
Malt. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Shout out Malternate reality.
That
That's
stuff
New
is
England
nice.
IPA. Oh, you've had it before?
I had that. Yeah, I had that on one of our earlier podcasts. Actually, I got it
really?
from work. Yeah.
Well, cheers, boys. Oh,
Yeah, cheers. Bring it in. Get the taller. Oh, crack one. There we go. Yeah, man. Well, I'm happy to see. So, have you been doing many shows since restrictions have died down a little bit?
I've been, lucky for the most part. Getting to play a little bit with my buddies Steve and Mike in Holler. Our trio, they put out our first album May last year.
Nice.
It was a bit of a wacky time to release your debut album, but we were lucky. We got some gigs for the CBRM. Has been very good to us. We've played a few in New Brunswick, a few on the mainland, and done a bit of tracking work.
I was like, what is happening, man? Are we getting there? Is there a bear?
I knew a mosquito just got my back, and I turned around. It was right there, and I was like,
I feel
Gotta
like
do it.
if a mosquito lands on one of these light rings, they're gonna just burn up on re-entry.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
I don't support the violence against mosquitoes, but gotta condone that.
Fair enough.
Can't
Yeah.
condone that.
that's how we're gonna get canceled.
Yeah, killing mosquitoes on YouTube. We're gonna get taken down. But no, it's
Yeah.
good though. But that's what I noticed too is and I'm familiar with your stuff and everything. But you are in a lot of groups all at once simultaneously because you're in another group that wasn't. You guys were nominated for a JUNO. This year.
Thanks. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
That was
congrats.
I appreciate that, buddy. It was pretty exciting and first JUNO nod. And that's a great group of fellas. They're called Rum Ragged, and they're based in St. John's, Newfoundland. And they do mostly traditional folk Newfoundland stuff with a pretty, pretty solid amount of pride for the traditional stuff that comes from their neck of the woods. And I've gotten a whole new, it's so funny, man. They're our neighbors, but like in Cape Breton, we don't have, there's so many tunes that they have there that we don't have here. Inflections, way of speaking, songs, and a super rich, folklore tradition that is completely new to me. So it's been a pretty cool adventure getting to travel a bit, play with them. Back in October last year, we got to do a tour of the Newfoundland Arts and Culture Centers, and it was like from St. John's to Corner Brook and back, and like at that point we felt like the luckiest band in North America. I don't think there was anybody playing comfy theaters like at that point. We were kind of the first sheep in the meadow, so to speak, trying this tour, and it was very well regulated by like the health authority over there. Like everybody comes to the theater, comes in one door, goes out the other door, wears their masks, no bathroom break or intermission. Like you just do a straight 75-minute set, and like it was the closest thing to normal that we'd felt in a long time. And yeah, we got to do a tour of their home province, and at that point there wasn't really anything like that going on for the other Atlantic bubble provinces. So all in all, like that's been a pretty cool experience, and getting to play with Crowder's Bridge, great batch of bluegrass guys playing good belly rubbing country bluegrass tunes. That's always a fun challenge and still new to me. And I'm never bored, man. I'm lucky to get to play with different people, and there's always the trad Cape Breton Scottish stuff that is kind of what I started with, that is fortunately in high demand from folks coming to visit the island. So I consider myself super fortunate to have so many musical buddies that are nice and fun to work with, and to have the options to travel, especially during this past year, you know.
Are you in so many groups out of, the demand for like this kind of caliber of fiddle player, or is it just like friends that you're like, let's start a group? You know what I mean? Or are you like kind of sought after?
That's a good question. I guess like I met the Crowdis Bridge guys through friends of friends, and they were needing a fiddler at the time. I met the Rum Ragged guys about 2 years before. They had 2 members take full-time jobs that meant they weren't going to be able to tour as much. Holler is a project that Steve, Mike, and I said, hey, we think we have something special here. Let's make this an effort. And Mike and I kind of started that out fairly organically, just jamming at open mic nights at Governor's on Tuesday nights. Miss open mics, remember those?
You know what, dude? I don't know if I've ever done an open mic, to be honest.
I feel like a rap open mic would be
up
crazy.
And I just spit the bars, but, maybe I have. I don't know, but but I know you commonly attended the open mics at Governor's and stuff, because I remember sometimes I'd be just chatting with Mickey. He'd be like, "Oh, Colin's here." He'd send me a picture, and you're just jamming out. Yeah. I think it was one time. Was it you and Gordy that were?
Yeah,
Governor's.
Gordy Sampson
I
did
love
show
that.
up.
That's so cool about Governor's, is like there's these legendary Cape Breton musicians that might sometimes just kind of pop in or anywhere around here, and then if they have an open mic night, like nobody, I don't know, maybe that's just in our culture, like we're very, very humble, and we just, especially the musicians, they're just, you like to play no matter where you are, and no matter if there's 500 people in the room or 5 people, and you just jump up there and play. That's pretty cool. It's like a free show for.
It's funny, like I feel like a lot of Cape Breton music does happen. It comes from a pretty organic source like that.
Mm-hmm.
Starts in a kitchen, 2 musicians getting to run into each other that may not have met or played together before, and then seeing where it goes. For me, playing with the Holler guys, especially like Mike Liliev and Steve McDougall from Slowco, have been playing together since like they were kids, and they basically think with the same brain, and they've always wanted to start a more acoustic, folkier project. Mm-hmm. So this was a really neat opportunity. I've always been a Slow Coaster fan, to get to learn from those fellas, and with the guys in Newfoundland, Mark is a super talented songwriter, and a really passionate researcher of old music, and so is Aaron Collis, their accordion player. And Aaron's just one of these musicians that they're so good that I'd be an idiot if I didn't take the opportunity to play with him. He's so talented and has such an all-encompassing head for music on rhythmic, melodic, and vocal fronts. So these are experiences that you can't pass up,
And that was something I was going to ask, what your process was when it came to choosing, because you are in various different groups, and you also perform as a side musician sometimes as well. Mm-hmm. Is there are you just basically doing it off of just the organic feel? Sometimes if somebody approaches you with an idea, you jam with them for a bit, and you're like, okay, I can see this being something that we could move forward with and actually perform and get booked and do shows as a group together. Is there a process where you're kind of thinking you're going into something being like, this might be a group, or is it kind of just naturally happen over time?
It's it'd be a definitely there's a little bit of a magic in the bottle element to things, where you play with people and it's like, oh, that was fun. That I got to do that again. If I don't do that again, then what am I doing here? And then there's other things that take a little more time to naturally happen, when I accompany, say, another solo artist, say like your tune Home, you know, like that was like have a listen to it, try and find something that complements it, that also says like it's me on the track without trying to get in the way too much. And I find that as long as I try to walk that line between complimenting and doing something that isn't necessarily technically like technically like whoa or anything, just something that's tasty for the song, then like all like only good things can come from that, ideally, you know. And everybody that I've had the chance to record on their CDs has been super accommodating for a fiddler that may not have played bluegrass before, or may not have heard their music before. Sometimes I'll get calls to go to Mark Scott's studio or Sound Park Studio or Lakewind and play on somebody's record, and I haven't heard it until I walk in the door.
Right.
And you gotta like,
It's something you adapt very easily, though.
yeah, you gotta play what sounds good now.
Right.
Like you can't really think about it too much, and there's tricks over time that you know will work for most things, but for each one I try to do something special that complements it. And so far I've like, there's one or two projects where I went in and I recorded and they weren't super happy with what I did, and that's, you know, I did my best, and that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
I went with the understanding that I could get taken off the record, you know, or not featured on certain tunes because maybe other instruments come in, or they decide to strip it down or whatever.
And that's never a personal decision on their part either.
Nah.
It's like they're inviting you to come in, see what ideas you can lay down on the track, and if they go back and listen to it and they decide, oh, we need to replace it with this instrument or whatever, I mean, it's there. You did your part. You were asked and you showed up and did your thing. You must not turn down many many requests to collaborate, do you? Like,
I try not to. There's you know, it would take like a fair tangle for me to say like, you know, maybe I can't be at that, or like it would either be like a scheduling issue if there was like somebody was, say, on a deadline trying to get a record done in the
Right.
coming months, and if those months were July and August and I was going to be away for a lot of it, I would say like, I can't help but here's someone who might be able to help. You know, I'll always try to leave them in an okay spot for what they're looking for. But yeah, as often as possible, I think that's the name of the game, learning from collaborating, like yourself, you know, getting to feature or be featured on other folks' albums, songwriting with other people. Those are the connections that keep a music scene vibrant and makes stuff like ebb and flow in terms of bending genres, and it's the stuff that sometimes makes the coolest results, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do you get a lot of like outside of the box kind of collaborations? Like for you two to collaborate, I don't think would be people's first thought. You know what I mean? Hip hop artist and a fiddle player. So like, do you get a lot of that, or?
Like I definitely, like you were definitely my only hip hop call I think I've ever had, and it was a fucking blast, man. Pardon my French, but like it was like, man, that was a real treat and outside of the box for me. I've gotten to play like from it, like I remember back in high school, a bunch of my buddies having like hard rock or punk bands.
Yeah, I was supposed to say, you're gonna ever get on the punk or metal, and you're just like.
And when I figured it out, I was like, oh, a fiddle can go through a distortion pedal, and that sounds like foolish, so I should try that for a bit. I remember trying that and thinking like, okay, like, there's a couple of records that in the Cape Breton fiddling world, at least, like for me, Ashley McIsaac and Natalie McMaster have been kind of my two bigger influences, and on the trad ear front, Howie McDonald's, because all three of them are super versatile musicians in a whole slew of genres, and none of them are afraid to experiment with those genres. Right. So when I like really got into Cape Breton fiddling was when I realized that, oh, Ashley made this record like 96 called Hi, How Are You Today, that is super like punk and hard, like edgy Cape Breton fiddle. And it was like,
really?
Yeah, and it's like
that's the subgenre.
What was it called?
Gangster fiddle.
It's called Hi, How Are You Today? Yeah, and that was a big kind of eye-opening record for me. It was like, oh, trad fiddle can sound like this. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, so when you kind of have that in the back of your head, like playing trad music, you get a new appreciation for the boiled down version of it, and it gives you the sense of adventure to kind of try whatever. If I were to run into a Spanish flamenco guitarist, like I'd be like, hey, I wonder if that can work with a fiddle tune, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Did Ashley's song titles inspire yours at all?
Why did you got funny ones too? Before we started filming, we were looking at some of his song titles. But yeah, what does he got some
good ones?
The first song isn't that crazy. It's called Beaton's Delight, but then it goes Sleepy Maggie,
yes,
Rusty D Con all capitals struck shun.
Show me that one. I didn't see that one.
Rusty Deconstruction.
Yeah.
Deadly Blast.
The Devil
Jigs.
in the Kitchen, McDougal's Pride, Spoon Boy.
I like Spoon Boy.
What an idiot he is. Sophia's Pipes.
Yeah.
Sad Wedding Day. Wingstock.
Like Wingstop.
Hills of Glenorchy.
Yeah.
And then the last song, Brenda Stubert.
Well,
right,
do you know about Brenda?
Oh yeah, so Brenda Stubert's a fiddle player from the north side and great composer. And there's a tune called Brenda Stubert's Reel that's composed by another Cape Bretoner, Jerry Holland. And Brenda Stubert's Reel is a tune that probably around that time that came out, and largely probably thanks to Ashley, became like a tune standard in like Irish, Scottish, and Cape Breton, and even like sort of old time like country fiddling too, like Western Canada. And like, yeah, that tune has like kind of transcended a whole bunch of different folky styles. So
cool, man.
Yeah, there's like Cape Breton music.
Album artwork's pretty intense.
Dude, I'm gonna rap to Brenda Stubert for sure.
Look at that album artwork.
Yeah.
Damn, son.
Yeah.
He looks like he's in
he's ready to like
flames.
eat your soul
on
acid.
But that's the thing. I didn't even know this, but you're not actually born and raised in Cape Breton.
That's right.
You're like the symbol of Cape Breton. When you think of Cape Breton music, like Colin Grant is like fiddle, Cape Breton, boom, that's it right there. But you were born in Toronto, right?
That's right. I'm an import, yeah. And
yeah.
I like, you know, I do realize that when you move to Cape Breton, like, it doesn't matter how young you are, like, you'll always be an import and or a come from awayer, and I'm cool with that. Like, I know that in Toronto, when I grew up, I started playing classical music, but all of the music I listened to at home was like East Coast folk and traditional music. So I was playing kind of like classical tunes that you would recognize from like orchestra music, and but Mom and Dad were playing the Rankins, the Bear McNeils, Buddy McMaster, Natalie McMaster, Howie McDonald, Jerry Holland, Ashley McIsaac at home.
So did they have roots here?
Mom and Dad are originally from Halifax and Dartmouth.
So close.
So yeah, I don't actually have that I know of, except in Glace Bay, and this is I shit you not, I have a 13th cousin twice removed.
Is that even real?
I
feel like going back to biblical times.
I feel like we're more related than
13?
that. And I'm from Glace Bay.
How far back?
Is it me?
We probably are, but
13.
this is like math that my dad did because he's been
Like
into
the fucking
genealogical
400s or something.
Isn't that off the head? Like, yeah, no, my buddy Jeff that I met like my first summer that I moved to Cape Breton was 13, 14, and he was in the same like summer camp as me, and like my dad met his dad and they started narrowing down like funny questions about, hey, where are you from originally and this and that. And yeah, Dad found in one of his genealogical books about our family that I was related to Jeff and that we were 13th cousins twice removed.
So what is that? What does the twice removed mean?
Like divorce?
Is it just divorce and then remarriage? A divorce? Like what is that? Like what happens for you to be twice removed?
I think the removed does have. I think it has to do with marriage. Like you might not be related, but through marriage you're related.
I think it's different generations.
Oh,
like
maybe
you might be like so far down from the link, but they're too off from you.
that makes sense. Yeah, I'd believe that. I'd have to get into some serious like math but my dad would be able to explain to me how and why that is.
We like to stay away from math on this show.
It being summer and all, but
there's been a few debates that have made everyone was wrong. At the end of it.
well, that's the only way to be.
Yeah.
He says 13th great grandparents, so that would mean like 12 grandparents ago, according to this website.
Yeah,
it's probably not trustworthy, but
I believe everything on the internet.
This is fourth cousins or third great grandparent, 5 generations.
Basically, like
That's
a
so long
duchess
ago.
got kidnapped from Scotland in the 1700s and got brought to the Annapolis Valley of Nova Scotia, and then the family kind of like sprouted from there. But
Oh wow! I thought you were joking at first.
no, my dad like
real.
has traced like there was a duchess that got kidnapped off of a boat, and yeah.
So you're a descendant of royalty. As a duchess of a high.
I guess,
echelon?
yeah, I guess so.
They're up there.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't inherit any of her money.
Your next album should be called "Descendant of a Duchess."
That's
That'd be
not
hard.
too bad a
like
title
that.
by. Yeah.
You started playing fiddle, like you got into music very young though, didn't you?
Pretty
Like,
young.
What was the age that you picked up the fid?
It would have been like 4 when I started classical lessons, and I almost quit. Like it wasn't my kind of music, man. I just
At
wasn't
4?
into
Well,
it.
I mean,
you were making these. You were like, this is my vibe.
I did it till I was 11.
My parents are telling me to get my shit together.
Yeah, my dad were always
That was
supportive
fun.
without being pushy.
I have a 4-year-old. I don't know how they would get you to do that at all.
Yeah. Well, I peed myself,
must have
but
had to-
You
must
really
have
should be
wanted
trying
to do it.
harder. Yeah.
yeah.
For
Get your shit together. Play the fiddle, learn the piano. You're joining soccer and baseball.
I can't
Yeah.
get my kid to do shit, but he's super into math, and he'll multiply and shit all the time. So
Yep.
you must have really been drawn to this by yourself.
There's pictures of me taking a ukulele that we had in the house, and I would take a pen to it and scratch away at it. And at some point, the sound of that must have grinded
Was
Mom and
appealing to
Dad
you,
down.
Oh, right. They're like, hey,
And they're
do
like,
this elsewhere.
We might as well get a real one and see what
Yeah.
happens. And the Suzuki classical program is really great for getting kids started at a young age in not just fiddle, but like piano and voice and all kinds of stuff. But like I definitely almost quit when I was 11 because I was just not into practicing.
Different time.
Wasn't my kind of music. And then I discovered, wait a minute, I can just like play the music that I grew up listening to, and that being Cape Breton fiddle music, I don't have to play it exactly the way these classical books say, like, gotta do this bow stroke there and there. Like, you kind of have freedom of movement and of interpretation in traditional music, because there isn't really a handbook for, like, how to play. There are teachers with, like, proven methods that have taught a bunch of people, but you got to be able to learn by ear a bit. You got to be able to understand the chord structure behind it. That kind of leads you into other kinds of music. So I was super lucky. I owe a lot of it to a fiddle teacher named Sandy McIntyre, who was a Cape Bretoner, lived in Toronto, where I was growing up. Started with him, started coming to the Gaelic College here in Cape Breton for summer holidays when we'd be coming down to visit the family anyway in Halifax and Dartmouth, and it kind of just grew from there. Yep. It was never boring either.
So when you were, because you moved here when you were what, like 14?
Yep.
So as your interest in the fiddle and playing the fiddle continues to progress as you're getting older, and you're obviously progressing and getting better and everything. Are you listening to like Cape Breton? Where does that rank in the category of like locations for fiddle music? Is this like really high? I think that we're like top 5, but as far as like locations, like when you were moving to Cape Breton as someone who played the fiddle, were you like, oh my god, I'm going to the place to live that produces all the music that I listen to?
I was definitely
Excited because of that.
Oh, you were older when you came here?
I would have been 13 or 14, I think, and I knew from listening to Ashley and Natalie while I lived in Toronto that Cape Breton was a really special place. I didn't really know until later how it fit into like the diaspora of like all the different Celtic nations that play Celtic music, but there are roots on that front back to Scotland for us here in Cape Breton, but also to Ireland. A lot of Irish immigrants came here to Cape Breton, even to Glace Bay here to work in the mines.
Right.
In New Waterford. There's a lot of Celtic music in France, Spain, and it's appreciated even further widely than that, like in Germany and Switzerland.
Mainly Europe.
Yeah, mainly Europe, but there's these little pockets of like Cape Breton is one like Celtic Canadian pocket, but there's also a super vibrant pocket in like Ottawa Valley area, Ontario, where there's a lot of Scottish descendants and Irish descendants, and where it mixed a lot with Métis music, like Aboriginal players. So like there's all these different, like you can find Scottish music getting played by Acadians, Mi'kmaq people, Métis people, and it kind of like it sort of went everywhere. So but for me, like Cape Breton has a very strongly Scottish rooted tradition, but that's not to say that Irish and French music didn't make a dent here. It's just like Scottish Cape Breton music is the more dominant kind of tradition, I guess, on the go.
It seems very community oriented too.
Big
And
time.
when you were over in Scotland for that documentary, we'll talk about it in a second, but like,
Yeah.
were they very familiar with the musicians in this particular genre from Cape Breton when you were over there talking with other fiddle players and whatnot?
Yeah, in Scotland and Ireland, it's where it all came from, right? So it's they wouldn't necessarily have to be aware of Cape Breton, but over time, musicians like Natalie and Ashley have put us on the map for them.
Internationally, yeah.
Yeah, and like they appreciate that in Cape Breton there has been on some fronts some innovation, but there's also been a bit of preservation of a style of playing that is no longer heard as much in Scotland, and that's come from just over the passage of time.
The traditional sounds that they've kind of branched off from.
Yeah.
Are still a little more prevalent here.
Exactly. Like it came here in the 1700s, and because it was so isolated, it stayed that way here. And over in Scotland, they had like in the late 1700s, 1800s, they had kind of a classical mixing with traditional music. And since then, those players play very cleanly, very, super great technique, where here we still have kind of this old grit that isn't necessarily super refined in a classical sense, but it still has a certain energy to
It's
it.
a personality.
Yeah, exactly. And it's dirt and grit that comes from the 1700s of tough times, people coming and surviving shitty Canadian winters and coming here and like making music that was based on the Gaelic language. And in the Gaelic language there's these very kind of, it's a musical way of speaking, and it's like a harsher kind of the harsher consonant sounds. They get translated into that scratchiness that you hear in the bow. And over in Scotland, they do have those connections to Gaelic as well, but they were just preserved in a slightly different and more classical way, you know? So what we have here is super special, and I think it'll continue to be that way. And like getting to have these exchanges like that bridge over the Atlantic with such talented Scottish musicians gives us an appreciation for the way they are innovating and mixing with different genres, and their repertoire that is some tunes in common with here, some of the tunes we play here they've forgotten over there, and a lot of the new stuff they're writing over there just takes like sometimes 10 to 20 years to swim across the Atlantic until we're playing it here, you know? So yeah, that exchange going forward is always going to be super important, I'd say.
How did you get selected to be the representative for Cape Breton, or was it just like, because the whole concept of that documentary was basically you guys getting to get a better understanding of each location's culture, right? And how did CBC go about, like, what was that process like in choosing you to be the person that, you know, they sent over to Scotland to kind of let them document your just experience?
What was the name of the documentary?
Yeah, it's called Bridge Over the Atlantic.
Oh, okay.
And I got a call from a talented producer from Pictou County, who's originally from the UK, Stubert Cresswell, and he had produced a documentary that my buddy Scott Mcmillan had done music for, that we actually went over to Scotland to record in a studio over there. And he wanted to try a new project that had these exchanges between sort of the old Scottish way in Scotland and Cape Breton's old Scottish ways, and found the similarities and differences between those two things. And yeah, it wasn't so much that I was picked to represent, but I feel like I've been lucky to get to collaborate with musicians from overseas before, and maybe they thought I could help sort of keep making those bridgey connections with them over there. And yeah, it was quite an adventure as a result.
How long were you over there for?
Probably there for about 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Filming, and then we had like a week off. That would have been like September.
Because
20...
Celtic Colors was coming up, right?
That's right.
Because you guys did it at the end.
They came over here for about a week and a half, 2 weeks after for Celtic Colors, and that concert that we put on was kind of the culmination of all of our travels up until that point, both on that side and on this side. Yeah,
seemed like it was a very like demanding and exhausting few weeks. It seemed like you guys were doing a lot.
Yes, but there's shots in that where I was like, oh my god, I'm on camera here today. Somebody grabbed this fella some toothpicks to prop open my eyelids. Like,
yeah,
it was in a good tired though, you know, like if we were tired, it was because we were either trying to cover a lot of ground in a short time, or we were getting a really amazing cultural experience that could only happen in a tiny pub in Aberdeen until 1 in the morning.
Was a large quantity of beer part of that cultural experience?
Well, we like to think that as Canadians that we can you know, hold our own at the pub, but most of the things I learned about that,
the stereotypes
I probably learned from the Scots. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we'd have a tough time.
Drinking, eh?
We'd have a tough time keeping up with them.
Really? Like, is it just is it like the amount that they drink for the period of time, or is it how quick they drink? I guess both. But
I think it's like the quality of like they appreciate good quality whiskey. You know, like
It's not a big beer. It's like whiskey.
Beer 2.
I assume you guys had a decent pint every time there was like a shot of you guys in a restaurant playing together. But your beer was always full, so you get the job done before you start drinking. And there was one shot, and the guy next to you, his cup was basically empty, and I was like, oh, he's drinking. Colin is keeping it professional here.
I wonder. There was one time we had to film an NSLC commercial here, and this is like the funny thing. Like here in Nova Scotia, the laws are super strict about how you can film and advertise liquor. And in the commercial we filmed, like, I didn't realize this, but whenever you see a Canadian booze commercial or beer commercial or whatever, I don't know if you'll notice this, but the glass is always full. That is because if you show someone consuming that it's illegal to show someone consuming alcohol or show proof of that someone has consumed alcohol.
Very strange rule.
Super strange. One time we filmed a commercial for Destination Cape Breton at Governor's, and the patrons were all local Cape Bretoners that were like, you know, getting filmed as like background in this Cayley pub scene. And as soon as they figured out that like you could have a sip and legally the film crew would have to go around and top up your beer. So
That's the most Cape Breton thing I've ever heard in my life.
buddy, like
They're like, oh, whoops,
I
forgot.
They're like, oh, geez, you know, like, and they'd be like, okay, could everybody like just please like stop drinking, like, so yeah, right, like, yeah, try and tell. It was actually a good time, so. But yeah, maybe the liquor laws
Take
will
advantage of the rules. I
change
guess.
one day on that front.
Hopefully, man. I know what I really appreciate is that they changed like takeout liquor laws. That's like the best shit ever.
That's a COVID
Over
adjustment,
COVID,
right?
yeah.
Because they were just like businesses are getting crushed because they don't have liquor sales. Let's let them do takeout.
Take your beer home.
I
Yeah.
dare
You can
say.
go to the liquor store and get an overpriced beer.
Well, like
at the-
if you go to Montreal,
Rob.
you can go to like a corner store, right? Can you? I don't know.
I remember Montreal's. I mean, Quebec as a whole is they're a little bit different
like
how they do things. But
out west, you can go to like there's non-government weed shops.
I
You know
dare
what I
say, like, if they hadn't allowed it, like, there would have been like a full-blown, like, return of the bootleggers. Like, it would have been like bootlegging would have become a thing.
Another
again.
good
It
Yeah,
would
element.
have
that's
been
true.
like,
That would have been pretty sweet.
yeah,
New
new
out-
age
Cape Breton, Al
prohibition
Capone.
Yeah.
stuff going on, like secret knock for your speakeasy in the basement of someone's house, like.
I've only been to a bootleggers once, I think. And I was
Yeah.
at like 6 a.m, and he was up and ready to go.
That's
And
their
his
gig.
wife was like, "Oh," he was like, "Oh, 1 sec," and yeah, shout out to that guy. But it was pointless. I fell asleep like a half hour later. I was like, "Why did we do this?" But
It's all about the journey, bud.
yeah, what was it?
We didn't need a bootlegger for
Yeah.
last in high school.
Well, because your dad made the moonshine.
Well, he made his own whiskey.
Oh,
Nice.
And all the stuff that you shouldn't have drank
Yeah.
that was left over.
Yeah.
He would steal.
Yeah, we actually ran out.
Wow, he must have made some good stuff.
He had
then.
multiple jars. Yeah.
Oh man, that was messy.
But was it a little bit of an adjustment to have to deal with the amount of cameras that probably were following you through every step? I always think about that post-production process when it comes to doing stuff like that, because I imagine you film for quite a bit, but the amount of stuff that's actually used is probably a very small percentage. So the amount of footage that someone that's editing it would have to go through and be like, is this worth putting in? Is this not? And then just it'd be very tedious, and feel bad for people that have to edit something to that extent.
Shout out to Moose for like all the work he would have been doing for that same kind of issue for just making music videos. You know, you film more than you need, and then yeah, like you have to find a way to narrow it down to the best stuff. And like at first, I think CBC wanted like a 48-minute version, a 23-minute version.
You say
or
shout out to
20
Moose. Wait, did he work on that?
And he didn't work on it, but like he does that kind of process of editing and
Oh, yeah,
narrowing
yeah.
down like however many scenes that you'll shoot,
Oh,
and
100%.
angles you'll do. It's like maybe more concentrated of a schedule when you're filming a music video
Right.
than what we were doing. And obviously there'd be stuff that like we'd be taking a drive to the next filming location, and Ewan and I would have like a huge conversation in the back seat about like this tune, and the way we play this tune and that tune, and we'd end up like talking about all kinds of cool stuff that totally should have been filmed.
Right.
And the producer would be in the front seat going, will you guys like just shut up and save it for like, we're almost there, we're gonna turn the camera on as soon as we get there. And then they turn the camera on and we'd just be like useless, like, oh well, we already talked about that, right?
That right there is basically the reason why I started this podcast. I'm like, man, we got some good chats going on here. We should film this and put it out and see if people care.
That's right.
But
For everything.
I worked for 902, so you did Beer Fest.
Nice.
No, I can totally appreciate that because I've had a few jobs where it's like 80% of what you film, more than 80% of what you filmed is just trash. But it is great to record. You get some funny sound bites of,
some wild things.
Oh man, yeah. Some of the best stuff sometimes for say like a documentary must happen. Like I would imagine like that the easiest thing to do is to, if there's a possibility of letting at least one camera roll the entire time so that you don't miss a thing.
Right.
It would be a nightmare for like keeping tabs on the battery and for like file uploading and storage, but like
you would just need to have more employees.
But it
sucks
sucks
to deal with that shitty job.
when you get something good like a juicy little piece, but it doesn't like really fit the narrative, and then you're saying like, what was it? I don't remember the company, sorry, but wanted like certain cuts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this needs to be this long. Like I've shot like ads for like hours, and then I had to condense it to 30 seconds or 15 seconds, and it's like,
yeah,
you just throw so much gold out because you have to make it fit like a certain narrative, and even though something might have actually worked with that, like you're throwing so much gold out.
Exactly. Yeah, and like you said,
how long was this documentary? I didn't get to watch this today. I was working.
Yeah, I think it
was like 45 minutes.
Yeah,
But it's a part of it. It's a part of a broader series, right? Like it was what was it called? Something to do with maritime people.
Yes.
It was like an all Canadian show or something, like highlighting people that did different interesting things. Or
that's right. And I didn't get to see all of the other
There's
Canadian specials.
Quite a few.
Yeah.
It would take a long time. I was like
But
scrolling
but
for
you
a
guys
bit.
were filming. You said you were over there 3 weeks, and then they were over here for 1.5 or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
So like almost 5 weeks of filming, and then you turn it into 45 minutes.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. That's wild, dude. You could probably make like a whole season out of that.
You could make.
That's it.
You could probably make a equally good show out of all the shit that they cut out like 5 times.
It's hard to
crazy.
say. I do not envy the folks that have to make those
Yeah.
decisions.
No,
right?
But it's fun that you
listening
get to
that
be
and it was like,
the person on camera. They used to travel and
Makes
play
it-
and stuff.
yeah, it's a lot less stressful.
Did
probably.
you?
Totally.
I was reading. Like when I was when I googled your name at first. Do you know that you are also a Jamaican British author that has a TED Talk?
Yeah, I do, cause I get his Google alerts sometimes.
Oh no, yeah.
Yeah.
You're like fuck. What book did I publish?
Yeah, I have yet to add author to my list of credits, but there's also a singer from like northeastern U.S. somewhere who sings like Scottish folk stuff, and his name is like a hyphenated last name is Colin Grant Adams.
Ooh.
And like
Beef.
yeah, and we actually played a festival in Maine
Get out of town.
one time. I was with a band at that point, so it wasn't really my name on the bill. I don't.
Were you
think.
familiar with him though at the time? You're
I
like, there he is.
I was like, I gotta meet this dude, and he was
You
a great
didn't?
guy. I did.
Oh, you
yeah,
did?
yeah,
Oh, wow.
super nice guy, and
Oh
and
my
he was
God.
like, and it was almost like a meeting of the like
was
you,
you?
like where you're meeting your alter ego,
Oh,
but
man.
you're in the same universe. No, but it was he was super friendly and was like, hey man, I've read articles about you, and he's like, yeah, I see your name pops up on the internet, and
Yeah.
people ask me like, when are you playing in Canada, and
Yeah.
and yeah, sometimes like things get tangly. Like, do you ever run into anything like that?
Yeah.
Mitchell Bailey on the
Well,
internet.
I was
Is
gonna
there
say that,
another
but I was gonna
Mitchell
say in that scenario, it'd be crazy if far off in the distance you just see the British guy just kind of slowly walk towards you, the author, and then he just shakes your guys' hand. Like that'd be a badass picture someday.
That would be
you
cool.
You gotta reach out to that dude.
I should reach out to
He
him.
should do a book about you.
I wonder if
You
he
should
would.
make a song.
Get all the Colin Grants together. Wasn't there like an event that happened earlier this year or like last year where there was a bunch of guys with the same name that fucking
Josh.
Yeah, a bunch of Joshes had like a
They all
pool
they all
noodle
met up
fight or
and had
something.
a fight with like pool noodles. Or
Get all the
something.
Colin Grants together and have just a fiddle fight and just
Yeah.
tearing heads off.
Yeah, that'd be very detrimental.
Instead of that one guy be coming with his books.
The pool noodle sounds more dangerous. But
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I would not want to get hit with a fiddle, man.
it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, no
That was
doubt.
some slicey
No, actually,
strings.
that has happened. Like, luckily, there's not too many other Mitchell Baileys that can dominate my Google space because usually
There
just, like,
is this
interviews.
one guy,
But there
though.
is a guy, yeah, because on Google because all my music's on streaming services and all that stuff, so it'll say like available blah blah blah, and I'll just mostly have like if you Google your name or someone's name or whatever, they have a little bit of pictures on the side just from whatever Google's algorithm brings up, and usually it'll be like weird little screenshots of music videos. But there's this dude who sometimes appears, and he's an athlete, like a college athlete or something, but he has like his neck is like attached to like his shoulder like the dude got he's jacked, bro, and he has like a mullet.
Yeah.
And he's always been around. Like, I remember Googling my name, like, in grade 7, like, oh, who's going to come up? And, like, I always would see that guy. And somehow he must have had a little bit of a second wave, as far as just his notoriety. I don't know if he did something recently, but
amazing.
he has occupied, like, the biggest space of all my photos.
I
So
bet she doesn't have a Puma endorsement.
I hope maybe that's what got him in. They're like, this guy looks cooler than the other guy with the Puma endorsement. So put him up there.
That's awesome.
There's
Yeah.
another guy in this town that has the same name as me,
Yeah.
and I almost got beat up because of that.
Yeah.
And then another time, I almost had to like compete in a fucking Guitar Hero competition because of it.
Oh,
Because
man.
he like dipped out. I don't know. He went out for a smoke or something, and then they were like, Mitchell Turner and so, and I'm like, everybody that was there that knew me looked at me, and then everybody else looked at me, and I was like, I don't even know how to play this game. I don't have any famous Mitchell Turners.
It sounds like
You are
you.
the famous Mitchell Turner.
I
I mean,
guess.
you probably,
Yeah.
as a Mitchell Turner, you're probably involved in the most, like, public
Out there
content on
thing?
the internet. I would
I
think that
hope.
you might be able to take the cake. Unless that guy went, like, Guitar Hero Pro.
No,
You might have an issue, but...
Gotta wonder.
probably got beat up at some point.
oh, well, they've definitely caught up to him.
It's fine.
You've been to Indonesia.
I have, yeah.
That was my transition.
It's a gooder. Yeah, bye. That was a
Well,
weird
that's where
one.
I was going because I was talking about. I thought of the author from me thinking about Googling you because when I was Googling you, there was like 2 different bios that I came across and read, and I feel like one was like one was accurate on your website, like up to speed, and there was another one that was a little bit dated because it was like talking about your recent album that dropped in 2006. So I was like, okay, this one's a little bit.
Yeah.
This was a little bit needs to be updated a bit, but it
Yeah.
was talking about you did some kind of. Did you like help organize a festival for like traditional fiddle music in Indonesia or what? Was
Not
that thing?
quite.
Or you just played. Or?
I got an invite from, funnily enough, like, I think the way it happened was, like, the Canadian embassy in Jakarta wanted to put on a Canadian seafood festival.
This is very
This
neat.
sounds, it's going to sound foolish, and it probably is.
I love sentences that start like that.
Yeah.
I love hearing Jakarta in a story.
And they
I know.
called...
And seafood.
Yeah, Jakarta, like, is not a place you
Yeah.
stop by on your way to the store, and it's like fucking.
I usually stop by Jakarta. It's like Sobeys.
Hey, welcome to Jakarta.
Your
Oh,
cart,
I'm just picking up some bread. Why are we
Your
taking so
shopping
long?
Is
I
that
was,
in Indonesia?
shopping carta.
yeah. Why did you take so long? I was in Jakarta.
That's your
I
next
don't
going to
know
town.
who they called. It was like somebody in.
What a call to get though.
They actually
Colin,
called.
you're going to Jakarta.
I don't know if he still writes for the Cape Breton Post, Dan McDonald. They ended up calling Dan McDonald and said, like, we're looking for some Celtic musicians. Can you recommend anybody? And Dan called me and said, I got this weird one, Colin. Like, do you think you and at the time my girlfriend Angela, who's from Glace Bay, was a Highland dancer, and she sang a bit and played some boron and step danced. He said, do you think you guys would be able to go and play this? And I was like, well, I was in school at the time, and Angela and I were both attending University St. Anne for our degrees, and it turned out that it worked out that they flew us to Jakarta, and we got to play for this seafood festival and spend a week in what turned out to be like a 5-star hotel, like in retrospect paid for by the Canadian taxpayers. And like I don't know if I were like in charge of the Canadian taxpayers' money now, if I would have spent money on me, but like that's what happened. And we went and we played for this big ballroom of
They
like
spend money on worse things.
dignitaries.
I think they spent Canadian taxpayer money, interestingly, too.
Yeah, it's like,
little
listen,
bit.
send this fiddler from Cape Breton to a 5-star hotel and wherever Jakarta on his way to the store.
There's a
him
whole
over.
strange series of expenditures that I would not want to like have to explain.
Yeah.
There were ice sculptures at that, like
Oh my
they
God.
flew in
But
like
they wanted you to feel
boatloads of
welcome.
lobster and clear water and stuff, and it was like, you know,
It's like the Gordy Sampson song camp.
it it was like a long hop, skip, and a jump to song camp that year. Yes, by
Yeah.
man, yeah. It's so funny how like Canadian culture is world famous, and a lot of these things are like trade missions where the goal is to get businesses in Indonesia buying Canadian products.
Well, you were at a seafood festival.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
So selling, clear water lobster and scallops and whatever else, and the cultural aspect kind of comes part and
Was there
parcel.
Canadian
interesting that
seafood
they
being
would-
sold there, or you guys are just the entertainment?
I-
Like, how
yeah.
does that benefit
That's
Canada?
really
like,
interesting because
It's like, oh, we like that guy, so maybe we should get our lobsters. From
We're like we're nothing but we're a cultural garnish at that point.
yeah,
Like
I was just gonna say
this
the same.
is
you're
like-
like an accent on the here's our product, and here's some of our music. It's you're just kind of really you're trying to get an appreciation for that crowd.
It's like,
kind of crazy.
it's like
that you're a piece
hypnotizing
of,
them
like
with the
a-
culture.
Like
Yeah.
it seems like a gig, but it's actually a little bit deeper than that, where you're part of a show to sell something
yeah,
that is completely unrelated.
yeah,
that's
that's
strange.
it. We didn't
Kinda cool,
have to
though.
hawk seafood or anything from the stage or anything.
Would have been
No,
dope, though,
no,
if you did. Just throwing lobsters.
At
and-
that point, I would
jamming
have.
out.
No, it's just like you're creating like a whole
Yeah.
vibe. You know what I mean? And, the entertainment and the product, and it's I don't know. It's very interesting.
Yeah,
to me,
it would
actually.
have been how the embassy in Indonesia promoted Canadian trade and international trade at that point for Indonesia, and probably different parts of Southeast Asia would have been to expand Canadian fishing and tourism markets. So, yeah, we were just kind of along for that ride, and it was pretty crazy, a pretty cool gig that like I remember like Jakarta had a pretty like stark gap between rich and poor when we would walk out the door of our hotel, and they're like, you're not to walk off the grounds of this hotel because it's like you'll probably get like you probably won't be seen again or whatever. So like we'd have to be driven everywhere, and to see some pretty tough circumstances for folks there, around one block, and then pull up to a 5-star hotel at another block where
Right.
us and a bunch of like dignitaries, not just from Canada but from Indonesia, would be staying. There were bomb sniffing dogs and mirrors that would check the bottom of the car that we'd pull into the hotel at because it's not a super stable part of the world.
Right.
But
It's one of the
certain
highest
areas-
populated countries in the world, too, I think.
I
It's
wouldn't
like
doubt
number
that.
4 or 5, I think.
Yep.
Saw that on a Google once upon a time.
Every car that you drive by had like scratches down the side of it because
So close
Like,
to the traffic.
there would be 4 lanes of traffic that they would stretch to be 6. Like there would just be that many lanes, and motorbikes would
Going between.
scoot up.
Oh yeah, it's
and
not like
scratch
general
the Jesus
traffic,
out of
like
every
stop
car.
and go away. It's just people going where they can.
Yeah,
But that's what it's like with
rat race.
a
A lot of
majority
places,
countries out
yeah.
that way. Even when I went to Panama right before the pandemic, like I don't even know if that guy worked for the airport, but he had a shirt with the airport logo on. I just trusted him, which it worked out in my favor, but it could have been a complete gamble. But the difference that between him and everyone else, I was like, oh, get a taxi. He was like, do you need any, what did he say? He was like, do you need any guidance? And I was like, you know what? I like you. You're giving me. It's a
All
little bit
the
of a
guidance I
broader
need.
question. It's not like you need a ride. That's where you want. That's where we want to go. But it's a little. You said you need information. I was like, I do. What's the Wi-Fi? I need to figure out if you guys have Uber, unless I don't know where I'm going.
Yeah.
And but just the traffic. The dude was like, he didn't even look at the road. He was going through lanes. Like, I'd have no idea how we didn't die. But
Yeah, it's fine.
I could only imagine what it'd be like in a over there. But
Tangly.
yeah, definitely. What is like what would be the strangest, what would be the most surprising place that you've performed in that you wouldn't think would have a demographic for the type of music that you do?
That's a good question. Like, we've done one of the most interesting gigs I ever did was with an Acadian band called Blue, and it's a fellow named Patrice Boulian. He's from Clare, southwestern part of Nova Scotia, and Blue got a festival gig at the Shanghai International Arts Festival, and we played one gig like in downtown Shanghai for thousands of people, playing traditional, well, it would have been, I wouldn't say, like, it would be a band, Acadian folk group, with drums, bass, accordion, and fiddle, and we played to thousands of people on this massive stage in downtown Shanghai to thousands of super appreciative Chinese folks. And right after us, a singer got up and did like karaoke with a guitar player. It was like a full band sound, and it was just them and a guitar player. And I think at that point, I didn't really know that music was going more that direction anyway. Like, playing, now it's super common, and like to have like a DJ and yourself,
Right.
and a singer on stage. But at that point, like, playing that gig in that kind of a setting, and yet still have people appreciate it, even though they didn't really understand the words, that was a pretty memorable one. And
When was this?
this would have been like 2007.
Okay.
Well, fiddle's very powerful too. Like, it's unlike any other sound really that you can get from any instrument. I had a friend when we were living in Dartmouth that I worked with at Boston Pizza, who only got into fiddle because his grandfather had one that was like passed down, and he like restored it, and then he had to come down here to get something for it, and then go back to Halifax to take it to some guy to fix his fiddle, and he was staying in a trailer. He was like a camp counselor or something at the time, something like that, and we were in his trailer, and then the power went out, and then he was just like, all right, I'll rip the fiddle out, and like, it was just like, he didn't suck, but I knew that he was learning, like, just kind of getting into it, and I was like, this is like the most intense thing to listen to, like, when there's nothing else. It's like,
That's cool,
Very
man.
captivating.
that and like my sister used to play the trumpet, and I found that was like an instrument that was like very like just sorry.
It's okay. I was like, fuck the mic.
You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
so in your face, but the fiddle can also be like really beautiful too. Like, it can be so
They
intense.
say
but
that
also,
like fiddles have, like, because they're very close to the human vocal range, and they can imitate. I find like some brass instruments like trumpet and sax and stuff can imitate the human voice better than a fiddle can, but it's
I find the
a
fiddle still
familiar
can
thing.
well,
really well.
it
Yeah.
can translate like aggression, like you were saying before. It kind of relates to the Gaelic language.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like it with the harsher.
Yes,
sounds,
sounds
you know what I mean?
of the, like,
But it can
consonants.
also be so soft. Like, it's a very. You can go all over the place with it.
For sure. As a traditional musician, it's funny, like the fiddle gets put on a pedestal in many ways, especially in Cape Breton, as like it's the poster instrument for the tradition. But really, like, a lot of what we got came from bagpiping and the Gaelic language. So it's interesting that as musicians, even though the fiddler is often the face of whatever's going on, we can't play trad gigs without an accompanist. Like, we can. You could get away with, for me, about like 20 to 30 minutes of solo fiddle or duo fiddles, but after that, like, you're pushing your luck.
Unless everybody's there for that sole reason. Just to hear you rock out. Because I can kind of see that even with like hip hop.
Like weddings and funerals, I've done like solo.
Okay.
But like when it comes to playing a gig for longer than a half hour, we need that piano player or that guitar player or a combination of those and a band to complement it.
What instrument do you think that it best complements?
That best complements the fiddle? Yeah, probably piano is like the first one that comes to mind, but guitar can also be just as expressive. It kind of just depends on what you want. It's kind of hard to compare the two because
very different.
They have the same elements of bass and chords, but I think people more often associate traditional Cape Breton Scottish music with the accompaniment by the piano, and that comes from the pump organ back in the day. Was kind of the original piano, and then it was actually a piano player from New Waterford who took chording piano, like Cape Breton traditional piano chording, who had a jazz club outside her window that, as a little girl growing up, she would hear the jazz club music wafting up the street when like New Waterford was a hopping coal mine in town, and Mary Jessie heard the bass was what carried furthest. So she was like the first Cape Breton piano player to sort of incorporate like a walking bass approach to chording, and that is really what kind of defined Cape Breton traditional music for like until today. Before that, it took a very simplistic, nothing wrong, but like not a super adventurous approach. It was like the fiddler's the focus, like they get to make all the tune choices and we're just here to be felt but not seen or heard kind of thing. And she was the one that really brought the complexity to that accompaniment style, and then guitar players started kind of imitating that.
Interesting.
So, yeah, the piano is kind of like the OG, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I can't really even picture like a fiddle and a guitar in my head, but not just because probably I haven't listened to it. But
Yeah.
I feel like a piano, it would, because you can be like really soft or really aggressive with the fiddle. That
True.
if you're gonna go aggressive, that you can, like, the piano is something else where you can also get very soft or very aggressive. I feel like the guitar, I mean, I guess you can get soft with it, but it's still kind of, I don't know, it hits the ear different.
All of the good guitar accompanists that I know are good because they also have an understanding of other styles of music. One of the like best known Cape Breton guitar players is a guy he actually lives in Halifax named Dave McIsaac, and Dave is a blues guy, and he like knows and understands blues, and he can rip a telly with the best of them, but he also plays fiddle and has that kind of deep appreciation for blues and jazz that he incorporates not just like rhythm playing but bass runs into his style. Another guy would be like Scott Mcmillan, who has a pretty who I've gotten to collaborate with.
You guys did an album together?
We did, yeah. And Scott's like, he's between...
He came over to Scotland with you, didn't he?
He did,
Yeah.
yeah. And he is like one of the most talented across blues, jazz, classical, and Celtic. He knows where the lines blur for all four of those genres. And as a guitar player, I would do gigs with him, and you could tell that at that whatever gig, like what gig he was just coming from. Like if he was just coming from the jazz gig, he would have those chords
jazzy
on the
feel.
go. If he was coming from a classical gig, he'd have a certain sensitivity, a way of playing, and so forth. So like, yeah, a lot of the accompanists have to have an understanding of the repertoire of Cape Breton tunes, but also kind of be, have this tool belt that could be based on any number of different genres,
What are some genres of music that people would be surprised to find out that you listen to?
I don't know. I'm pretty eclectic. I like anything from Metallica, Rancid, harder stuff that really just boils the Jesus out of your blood. If as long as
What were you listening to when you were younger, when you decided or almost decided to step away from doing what you were doing?
Smashing Pumpkins, probably. I was big into Nirvana, and for a spell Korn, and a bunch of the Woodstock bands, Woodstock 99 bands. I never stuck to one thing. I eventually sort of got into Dave Matthews Band for a spell, and now I'm this past over the pandemic, I fucking love Beyonce, man. She's a beast. I don't know, it's just I'm never pigeonholed into one sort of kind of music, but I think it comes down to the vision of a certain artist, and Beyonce walked into Coachella and just boom, this is what I'm at right here, and take it or leave it. And I think if an artist is walking out with that kind of an approach to anything, I can't help but respect whatever they're trying to do. Lately, my favorite band is a group called the Allum, which mixes kind of contemporary fusion stuff with Celtic music, and I really like what they're doing because I feel like they have a cool balance of indie music without it being too in your face.
How do you spell it? You said the Allum?
The Allum, yeah, and it's spelled weird. It's spelled Ollallam.
That was not how I was expecting it.
Yeah.
I was thinking an AUL.
It's a weird one.
I was thinking
situation. Alumni.
Yeah.
Have you ever dabbled in any hip hop at all, or?
Yeah, so if I don't know, there was a spell there where I saw Kanye play at open for the Rolling Stones, and
Was that in Halifax?
yeah, and I was more there to see Kanye than the Rolling Stones, and I remember.
When was this?
That would have been
this is a crazy show.
Yeah, that sounds
that was
insane. What the
2009, and it hammered rain for the whole. It was
I don't remember ever hearing about this.
It
I feel
was
even
crazy.
2009, I was in 6th grade. I feel
What
I
the
would have
fuck?
heard that Kanye was in Halifax with the
With the
Rolling Stones.
Rolling Stones?
And I
Yeah.
know Kanye probably wasn't. He was huge then, but probably not even as infamous as he is now.
yes.
But
I had
still was
no
big
idea.
enough to be open enough with the Rolling Stones. That's a crazy
What
tour
the fuck?
altogether.
It was foolish. You know who else?
That's a great way to
was on
describe
that?
it. Foolish.
You know who else was on that bill? Alice Cooper.
Oh,
Alice Cooper, then Kanye, then the Rolling Stones.
Some really rich
How-
people got fucked up, and they were like, "Let's put this one together."
It's probably what happened.
Yeah, and everyone was
Not far
down.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I don't know. For hip hop, I like yourself, man. KO. I think has a really cool vibe, and I should know more about the genre, but I have to appreciate the amount of effort it must take to make your flow in some way. It's like a tune. You're playing around in front and behind the beat. You're using a lot of the same musical push and pull techniques for the purposes of tension and release that I'm using when I'm playing with Jason Roach on piano. We're constantly trying to have those crescendos and drops, and I know it's because it's lyrical. The nature of it is like comparing apples and oranges, but the musicality is fucking impressive.
Well, I think the rhythmic aspect of it is very similar to what you do on the fiddle, just in a different way, where I'm not per se, or other rappers or hip hop artists aren't necessarily playing an instrument. They're, vocalists, but like when you talk about the flow, it's like you switch up the flow like how you would switch up, the rhythm is something that you're playing. It's like, and especially when you go crazy on the fiddle and it's super, high speed and it's faster, and then you slow it down. It's like the same thing. Is like you might go da 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 da, and then slow it down, and then it's just like it's very it can be very technical.
Totally.
And yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, man. Like I'll always appreciate like somebody that can properly command you command the crowd with that confidence to bring them along for the ride with you,
Mm-hmm.
And that's the core of what our job is, like making people feel different emotions, whether that's good, bad, positive, negative, or balancing those two things to give them the chance to interpret what we're doing. It's at its core, what we do is so similar yet so different in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And hip hop is like there's the occasional time that like even like I hear somebody say go off about like that Migos Versace song, right? It's like the boys like for like a good solid minute are rapping Versace, and it's like, yeah, but like they had to decide to do that consciously, and there's a reason.
And they really popularized that like that it was just like a triplet, which is like that's something that is a fiddle like thing, right? I believe I have a conversation with my friend that I worked with about that, like the you know what I mean? It's a
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it kind of translates
Triplet
like why that
time.
became very popular.
And it's funny, like, yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite song by any means. I feel like the boys could have maybe, like, stretched a few other things
My
in there.
favorite thing is you referring to the Migos as the Boz, which has probably never been done before. I love it. I feel like we know them.
They won't mind. Yeah, like, I feel like we'd have a fucking pretty good hang with them fellas. They seem like a nice time, right?
No, I feel like they have a great time.
But like,
They're really good at some crazy
there's a
Next
whole
episode,
thing on
Colin
the
Grant and
internet
the Migos.
about the history of, and this is gonna like, I don't know if you've heard of this, but that technique of da-dum, 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 that kind of timing is called the Scotch Snap, and it comes from Africa originally, but it's called the Scotch Snap because we use that in Scottish music in a lot of traditional tunes. We get like a march or a strathspey where if you're looking at the music notes, it's like this is a dotted note followed by a cut note or vice versa. The cut note first is short, long, short, long, short, long, right? And we see that timing, and there's a whole thing, if you Google it, there's a guy who like broke down the history of the Scotch Snap and how it made its way into hip-hop music.
Wow. And
it's like, it's so crazy when you start looking at ties like that we all have in common rhythmically, but like it's all going back to Africa, you know.
Yeah.
It's so cool though that I was hearing more and more songs with that kind of timing in it, and I was like,
What, hip hop songs?
yeah, I was like,
Well, that's the thing. Like that song's like 9 years old at this point. Like that song was around, but I remember hearing that when I was like, that was around the time I was first really just like listening to hip hop very much closely, much closer than I used to listen to it, because I was like in 9th grade and I was like, I feel like I want to start writing this stuff, and I heard that and I was like, I hate this, like, because it was like nothing else I was listening to. But then over time, the artists that I listened to, I would see adopting that type of triplet flow and that sound, and their music would still be the type of music that they would make, but like the production was kind of changing, and that kind of became the general type of flow that somebody would have when they would go on a track, depending on the beat. And it took me a while to kind of like adjust to it and not like, because obviously that Versace song is like not the most. It doesn't have the most character in it, and not the most depth, but you know, that particular sound that they use, like, it took a while because it just seemed like everybody was kind of replicating that because of how popular that group became at the time. But
For sure.
is that like that must not be something that's like, because thinking about hip hop too, like a lot of it now is because it's such a popular genre. Certain artists will get really popular for more of a gimmick sometimes, and the character that they are. And that popularizes them, but they also make music, and therefore, because of how their presence is on Instagram, their music does extremely well, but they're constantly engaging in different gimmicks or online things that go viral or beefs or anything like that, where not necessarily always the most talented artists, like talent specifically doesn't always equal, you know, critical success in hip-hop especially. It's probably majority of genres, where I feel like in your genre,
Does that exist? Does that exist?
I feel like that can't exist.
That's Ashley McIsaac's business model.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
shock people first. Also, you know, be talented and put out like super solid music. Don't get me wrong, but Ashley is also about how do I get a reaction out of people, musically or otherwise.
And you know that as a fact that's something that is calculated and.
I would say
planned?
Yeah. In interviews, you know, I think he's said, you know, nobody can deny that I'm a good fiddle player, but like it's more than just being a good fiddle player. It's you do have to know how to market yourself, how to reach new audiences, how to keep people engaged, and you know, everybody kind of goes about that a different way. I don't have a huge amount of confidence in myself when it comes to Instagram. Like, if you check my Instagram, it's probably been like a month or two since I've made a post. Like, I feel like that is my weakest part of my game, and I hope that one day I can like get better on that front. But
is it necessary though?
That's a better question for a younger fellow like yourself than for me. I'd say
the audiences are different,
for
right?
me,
Exactly.
we are playing to different audiences, so that's
Do you have
true.
is there a like up and coming young audience for this music?
Well,
Because I feel like
yeah.
the touring, like the just in general, the audience is different. Like how does do you need to be like social media present? But the first time I ever saw a 360 video. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like with those videos where you can see all the way around. It was actually Ashley McIsaac and like 3 other people playing. Were you part of that?
I wasn't, but yeah, that was like the New York Times videographer
Yeah, it was
guy
like
slapped
I think I
a
remember that.
360-degree camera on his fiddle, and it gave you a view of his fingers, the bow, and like the whole stage around him and his backing musicians. Yeah, like things like that. I feel like I know right now that I'm super fortunate in the folk music world that there are a lot of like it's a very organic kind of genre, and everybody's like wants to just meet you after the show and get you to sign their CD, and people still buy CDs in that world, right?
I love that.
At least
Is it a little bit of
for
an
now.
older demographic as well, right?
Generally, yes.
And it's interesting because there actually is, and when
Didn't
we were
want to,
talking,
but I gotta pee.
oh, go ahead, bro.
Give her, buddy.
Enjoy. When we had Mac on last week, like he showed that there's actually kind of a community like that in hip hop right now, where there's like a kind of a movement of people that are doing sounds that are similar to like the '90s stuff, and I guess they probably appeal to people my age as well, because I can appreciate the music that they make. But it's kind of like an underground New York scene, but they're selling a lot of vinyl records, and these guys will put out, you know, a new record, and they'll have like 1,000 vinyls, all like $100 each or some price, and they'll sell out instantly because it's not necessarily the size of the audience, but how engaged that audience is and how willing to support that audience is. And I feel like quality can outweigh quantity when it comes to stuff like that, and you still can sell CDs because the consumer is appreciative of having that physical.
I'm so glad we got to talk about this, man, because I was thinking about this on the way in, and like about asking you, like, I just bought a 2020 car that doesn't have a CD player in it, and for
I don't have one of mine either. And, yeah.
like, so if that's not the next thing, I know that like Spotify and like getting my play counts up and reaching an audience that way is going to be super important moving forward. And if I don't take those steps early on in my career to make those connections with a younger audience, then yeah, I could be looking at a tough time down the road, you know, making connections. I don't want to be the like whiny fiddler who doesn't get gigs anymore because he didn't like post about them on Facebook. Right now I'm spoiled and people still come to the shows even though I don't promote them as well as I should. But like, it's so funny, man, like technology through the generations. Like one time we had this we were selling CDs at a CD table at a festival, I think it was in Pittsburgh, Irish Festival, and we had these two sweet ladies come up that were probably in their late 70s come up to the table, and you know, they just want to say hello and meet you and tell you that they enjoyed the tunes and can you sign our CD for us. And you know, they both had their like $20 bills pulled out ready to pay, and one of them like bought a CD, and then the other went to pay or something, and she was like, Gladys, I can just burn this for you, like, and we're like right there, right? And it was so funny. Like normally
They didn't even realize.
like, yeah, they were
It's not even.
you're good, yeah. And they, like, it was so like it was adorable because it was like, we have the technology for that, right? Like,
they didn't even realize that was like a little bit offensive to the people that are trying to. It's like literally right in front of you guys. Hey, we don't have to buy this. We can just illegally burn it, so you can get it for free.
Yeah,
isn't that cool?
And they were like, yeah, we can do that, and like it was like so funny that like there was no way we were gonna say anything. It was just like,
they
nice
didn't
to meet you
realize
both.
like, oh man,
no, and like
I guess you got one sale.
Yeah, that's it, right?
But they needed at least buy one to get two.
So when I think of that, I think like that's like that Gladys is probably in her late 80s now and probably not going to festivals anymore. So what about the next like group of 56-year-olds? Are they going to be on Spotify? Probably. You know what I mean? Like,
my parents are in their 50s and they're on Spotify.
Exactly. So like, if we're not doing that, I do feel like Spotify, I wish it paid better, but I do understand like how it's important that analytics from those things are going to be super important for like
figuring out where to book shows.
Exactly.
And that's the thing with Spotify too, is I mean, essentially the vast majority of users on Spotify, I would think, would probably be anywhere from 15 to 35 or 40. I feel like that's the main demographic of Spotify users. And then you think, okay, what is the most popular genre for people like that to listen to? And then, you know, pop or hip hop or whatever. But I feel like your genre, the people that listen to the type of music that you make, I would say are typically more devoted and engaged to the artists that they like and they listen to. So I think that if you were to have 5,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, in comparison to some artist who's probably signed to a major label with a couple of popular hits that might have a couple million, you know, that doesn't look like much. But I would feel like the 5,000 people or 10 or 15 that would be listening to you, or even 2,000, they're not listening twice. They're listening every day.
Yeah, like every album.
That's that is true. It's a very loyal demographic, and people that would listen to Celtic, I feel, would also may have arrived at my music through bluegrass. You know, Spotify is kind of cool like that, the way they can say like, oh, okay, you kind of like, you know, folky stuff, like here's some Rum Ragged, you know, from Newfoundland, or here's you know, some bluegrass, Crowder's Bridge from Cape Breton, and it could all be kind of meandering and not and the lines of the genres are more blurry, and that seems to open access to more people, and that access to people seems to be the key.
Well, the thing is, like, the payouts as well, people can argue that they're not as much as they would like them to be, but at the same time, Spotify's algorithm can make you reach so many more people just based off of, like, you know, if you put out something and it's on your release radar as a user, and you hit the heart button or you add it to a playlist, if enough people do that got presented that song, they'll put it on more release radars and more Discover Weeklies, which are algorithmic curated playlists that are designed specifically for a user and they're unique to the user. So they want to show music that people that have, like, if a certain amount of people have all enjoyed this song and Spotify's algorithm is like, oh, people like this song, let's show it to 1,000 more people. And if 500 people like that song, we'll continue to show it to more and more people because they want people to stay on their platform and stay subscribed because they're like, I like Spotify because it introduces me to new music that I like.
Yeah.
And just that alone, it can kind of outweigh, you know, maybe the cent per, or the percentage of a cent per stream that they actually pay out.
Yeah.
I think 1 million streams on Spotify is $4,000 US, which is like, oh my god, you got 1 million plays, you only got probably like 5,000-6,000 Canadian.
$4
But
to
at the
1,000,
same time, you didn't really have to do anything but put out the song. And
Right.
Spotify can if a small percentage people prove to their algorithm that they like it and it's a great song and it continues to be liked by other people, it'll just keep getting rewarded.
Yeah.
And then you got this like computer basically just pumping your stuff out to new fans, and it could kind of take a life of its own. So
Goes
there's
viral, yeah.
that's like the positives of it, but
And with somebody
Yeah.
like yourself, like where it's such a dedicated fan base, like you can be putting out things that you've had out for a decade that aren't selling anything physically, and then, you know what I mean, somebody like a dedicated fan base is going to go down the rabbit hole, right? And you could be getting thousands and thousands of streams on stuff that you haven't made money off of in God knows how long, right?
It's true, man. Like everybody's gonna have to be open to all of these new ways of marketing the music that are, like, we don't know what next year's version of Spotify is going to be.
yeah.
I think that, like, for a spell there, I got so kind of like, not frustrated, but like overwhelmed, I guess would be the best word, by like the sheer number of online platforms. It looked like every artist was hardcore, like, managing on a regular basis, and I was like, most of my fans are on Facebook. I'm gonna try and, if I only have so much time in the day to make a post, I'm probably gonna go to Facebook and post there. But, like, yeah, there's tricks for cross posting and ways to, you know, to develop that. I guess, like I find one time I took like an hour to make an Instagram post by. Like, I was just like shockingly so frustrated, just like,
How are you going to word it?
why does it keep cutting the edges off of my picture? Like, I
Yeah.
was just like, I
the
want to
worst.
post 2 photos and a video, and
And you-
why
you-
is
you
this
already-
so hard?
You
right?
already feel like Instagram should be grateful that I'm taking the time to make this post, and
I
they're
know.
making it difficult. And then
Definitely
you're like, I
not.
can't just quit. I got too far.
That's it.
Yeah.
I've like come this far. I've written what's going to be put in the text. Like, it should not be this hard. Why is this so
Oh,
fucking
man.
hard?
Yeah.
I
It's
don't
been
know,
such
man.
a big part of my whole existence that like I have it kind of down to a system, but still sometimes I will like lose my shit. Like,
I could take
it's
a
the
class
most
from you, by.
frustrating, bro. And I'll like I'll copy, like I'll make a post sometimes, and like before I'll just to be safe. Sometimes if I'm trying to upload, like, let's say a clip from the podcast and I know the video's 5 minutes long, and I'm like, maybe it's too big for Instagram or the Wi-Fi will cut out or something, I'll always copy and paste my caption and put it in my notes, like, because the most
I'm gonna have to start doing that.
concentration I do is wording. It's like, and I'll word shit differently on Instagram than I do on Facebook, because I'm like,
Right.
there's different people here, but
Sure.
it's a weird world.
You got it down to a science, man. It's really cool to see, and it's inspiring to slightly stunned old fellas like me. Like, yeah.
How old are you? You're not that-
I'm
you're-
36.
You're a young man. How far are we in the pod right now? Where are we at? Are we here too?
138.
I do this every time. Around an hour and a half, I'm like, man,
actually,
we
I
must be
think it was
going
way longer.
forever, bro. Only an hour and a half. Okay, it's just, okay, we're good.
Like, at least like half an hour ago, I was like, we gotta be like 2 hours.
That's so much, man. If you go back to the last like 3 episodes, I do this every time around this exact time. Dude.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's
How
weird.
long were your other ones? Like,
So this is the 18th episode. The one that we did last week was actually the longest. I felt like we used to always
I think
cut it off around 2 hours,
We do
but
it like every
then
week,
there
though.
was
It's
one-
always a little bit longer.
yeah, there was one episode where we broke 2 hours, and then I feel like we just keep we keep breaking it, and it sucks because
New
the
record.
next day it's like habit now. I force myself to listen to the whole thing before I put it out, and I'll just do like a timestamp. Like I'll pin the top comments in the video and just be like a breakdown of different sections of what we talked about at different parts. So
that's cool.
I'll do that, but like I will re-listen to this whole conversation like probably like first thing tomorrow, and then do that. And it's just like as I know it gets longer, I'm like I just know this is gonna take more time to listen to.
Yeah, exactly.
it's,
I hear you, buddy.
It's good, but so we kind of talked about this before. I just did a weird like I just caressed my leg there. I was like before. Actually, before we jump in, Jason, you got any questions? You're yeah, are you good? You're good. Okay.
I'm good, yeah.
Sweet. All right. Just always gotta make sure that if you got anything in the dome to throw it out there. We a little bit like we were talking about this before we started filming, but just like the effects that the pandemic most likely has had on a lot of people when it comes to just detaching them from, the social interactions that they were used to having, and just overall, like increased mental health and just that topic as a whole. Do you yourself feel like it was a little bit of an adjustment after kind of getting used to the lockdown life? I mean, as a performer and someone who travels a lot, you're used to socializing, you're used to, being around other people and all that stuff. But then also this thing as an artist, I don't know, like artists are also, I don't personally mind time by myself as well either, because you get to, write a song or be creative, or just you just need that time to kind of charge up for your next social interaction.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like we got really locked down. I think for a lot of people it must have been quite an adjustment, and I think that it's not talked about as much. The adjustment is it currently might be for people by them being kind of thrown back into the speed of things.
Totally, man. Like, I feel like we're gonna all have some hurdles to like overcome for social re-entry into the atmosphere, if you will. Like, I myself appreciated the downtime that COVID brought, because I had kind of been going like hard and fast for a pretty solid like 4 or 5 years without a lot of reprieve, and I think I needed the time to slow down and get a chance to reevaluate what was important. And I think what is still important for me is playing music with nice people, and making people happy. I think that's the core. Those are my core values in music. But the pressure of when the pressure of performing goes away for a long enough period of time, especially those that were so used to having that as having performing as a reference point, and it's such a personal business, right? Performing. Yes, there is a business side to it, but there's nothing more personal than business. And in the business of music, you are personally putting yourself on the line. For those that are like out there, and I know this isn't just artists, that people that are out there going like, I just really had a nice old 16 months on my couch, and now you're telling me I gotta like go and like be a human being and hang out with people again. I forget how to do that. Like, that's okay. That's kind of the bottom line. We're all gonna be like sort of swimming around for the next like 4 or 5 months as people get their vaccines and start feeling comfortable around people again. But like, I know people that are having right now a tough time getting back into gigs because the nerves are like they're wound so tight from COVID and not having that artistic outlet to kind of get rid of that nervousness. Like, they're putting extra pressure on themselves now. Like, holy smokes, nobody's heard me play live in this long. Like, I gotta get back on like the horse real quick, and
It's
I can't
gotta feel like a
mess up.
gamble too, where everybody's so cautious. Like, you know,
Totally.
how much of your audience, however dedicated they are, is going to show up because, you know, maybe, if they're older, they don't want to risk being sick. You know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
that's, you know, you can put a lot of money into something and then it doesn't really pay out.
Yeah. There was a gig we did recently that I won't name like all of the details for just anonymous-y reasons, but the gig we did had a great crowd. We had somebody come up from the back of the room with a piece of paper, like with a request written on it. And this was in April, so it was like still kind of like safe-ish here, but like Ontario was starting to clamp back down. Like, they're having a rough go at the third wave. And this person came out with no mask up to the stage and wanted to give us a request piece of paper for like in between tunes. And we started into a tune, and they came up, and I could see that they were like leaning in with this piece of paper, like to try and push it closer, and then like they thought, oh, maybe he won't see it there, so they leaned in closer and closer and closer, and they were crouching down. And this person was in their 70s, and when they went to get back out of the crouch, they couldn't, and they very like gradually like just kind of rolled backwards off of, luckily, a stage that was only this high, but like had a fall and like grabbed onto the mic stand because they're nailed down, right? And like gradually took both mics with them, and
I hope this doesn't end tragically. 'Cause
it doesn't end. It's
good.
all good that ends well. Like, I should say, like, this is like it's a
Disclaimer.
happy ending, but not happy. But it's like the mic came around and like hit them right between the eyes, and
Is that the happy ending?
it was kind of funny, but I felt bad. It was only because
I want to see how this ties into people not being able to adapt.
This on video.
Anyway,
I want to see this in a
at the end,
documentary.
like, I just, oh my god,
And slow.
like, I definitely, when you're a performer, you're taught like you keep going when something, no matter what, you keep.
I
going.
would address that shit right off the bat.
But nobody.
What are you doing?
Nobody came to help this person. Is the thing, and everybody.
So funny 'cause you guys keep
like,
rocking out.
and we
dude.
kept playing for like 3 seconds too long. Like, we're really lucky
Like,
that
those extra seconds are disrespectful.
bordering
What?
on like you
It's showbiz, baby.
You're
Stopped you.
supposed to help this lady that is like like one shoe off and arse over tea kettle on the front of the stage, and I felt so, but like, thank God there weren't any videos of it, because like if there had been videos of it, like, I feel like we'd be like,
You go viral, bro. You'd have
Yeah,
the
you could've
50,
blew
you'd
up,
have the
dude.
50,000
That would be the
monthly listeners
moment.
on
like,
Spotify
who's this
tomorrow.
band that just let this poor person just like fall off the front of their stage and like kept playing?
You just blew her away so bad.
I need to get
like-
tickets to their show.
Anyway,
She's crumpled.
it's okay that we forgot how to be human beings for a second.
I was wondering where that was gonna come around. Full
Sorry,
circle.
but
it was on you, not them. I
It-
thought they
it
were
was
totally
on
the-
us,
is that- okay.
and that pressure on us was like, oh my god, we just totally mishandled this whole thing. But it ended up okay because that person didn't get hurt, and because nobody filmed it.
right.
But that's the only two reasons, right?
Well, no one getting hurt is that's the biggest takeaway. But
Definitely.
if somebody filmed, I mean, there's two ways
a
it could
shoe
be bad.
loss, that's
If
all.
it's filmed, it's bad on you. But if they're hurt, it sucks for them because now they're hurt, and but like, why are they up there? It's because they didn't have a mask on.
Well, this is the tangle, right? Everybody was just like,
karma.
why would you be walking up to the stage with no mask on anyway? I thought, like, we had it pretty much down to a science here. So at first we were like, oh, God, like, what do we do here? And, oh, man, like, I think there's going to be a lot of social things like that should be obvious that are, like, and like, if you spend enough time on Facebook, you see how people, like, get at each other now. Like, people are taking, like, a lot less time to understand each other in these times. Like, they've realized what's important. They don't want to, they don't want to argue something. It's just easier to just call the other person an arsehole. And that lack of dialogue is what's going to put us in a super, like, tangly spot in a couple of years if we're not
It's already
having those
happening,
chats.
man. The United States is falling apart because of this.
I was on that. I don't know if he
We
showed me
got
this
to
app.
disagree and
Yeah.
be able to talk about it. Like,
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, because everybody's so divided on so many. There's there's subjects that everybody is familiar with, and yet and everybody, typically COVID, everyone has a strong stance on to some degree. And same with, like, politics or anything like that. COVID is like the new weather. You can talk about the weather with anybody. It's the easiest way to start a conversation.
Yeah.
COVID figured out a way to get in that as well, because it affects us all, just like the weather does. And but it's interesting, that app that he showed me, this app is called Ground News, and basically it's so interesting because it shows the trending stories internationally. And but it doesn't just give you, it gives you all the different news sources that are covering this story, and there'll be, like, the line, whether it's blue or red, and it'll show you, like, this is typically like a left.
Yeah, like what percentage of it is like left coverage versus
Yeah.
right coverage. It actually gives you like a report too at the end of every week if you have your notifications on like what you might have missed based on what you look at.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But it's interesting to see if you go, like, to the very far section on the right side, and the way that just how biased the headlines are covering certain things, and
Oh,
if you
so
go to the very
crazy.
end of the left side, still, like, just the way that information is spread and is distributed is so, even if they are correctly reporting on the particular story that they're covering, the way that it is written and worded very easily can manipulate
Well,
and
that's the most
dictate
important
somebody's
thing now.
opinion.
It's all propaganda. It's not even news.
But there is a lot. There is some, like, that routers. Like, there is
Oh,
not,
it's definitely news.
like,
but
bipartisan news sources that tell you exactly how it is without any form of bias whatsoever, and
it
that's
doesn't
great.
matter.
But you
It's
can
how
also
it's
see
presented.
comments on the app too. And I was reading something about like Derek Chauvin today, and I just out of interest, I was like, I'm gonna read Fox News's coverage of it, and the way that they reported it wasn't. I mean, it was they still even as controversial of an outlet they are, they still need to be credible to a degree. But then you look at the comments, and it's a whole different thing. And
Yeah,
I'm
man.
like, whoa, because we don't really get to see that side of the of the internet, and some of those comments
dude,
were like,
that place became a real like right wing
what?
hidey hole. I actually commented that on something just to
What
just to
did?
see what that app. Like when I
right.
first got on that, like nobody really commented on it, and now it's like every
Yeah.
single article is just like super right wing. Like it's crazy when you read the comments. Some terrible shit'll be happening, and they'll just like completely
They're
ignore.
gonna do like a completely opposite take on things. that
Oh,
are
it's
just-
it's crazy.
Well, I think, like, going forward, that is where the arts are gonna have to. Well, that's where we come in. Like, we are
Bring
it's-
people
it's
together.
gonna be our job to, like, sort of cut through the noise. Yes, offer our interpretations of events, emotions, feelings, and convey them through music, but to create positive spaces for dialogue that aren't a Facebook comment section
Right.
that is scientifically engineered to have people, like, at each other. Our art has to initiate people to have meaningful conversations and to interpret it, make people think on a more personal level. How do I feel about this? Okay, I don't have to react at that artist. This is a, like,
Gives them a different
oh,
way to share thought.
it can be a one-way transaction to start, And then, yes, engagement does come from that, and not all engagement like that you get back about a song that you might write about Derek Chauvin might be the kind that you're looking for, but at least you've provided hopefully a safe artistic space for people to have that conversation. And the artistic nature of it, that there is time spent to really work out the chords and the basics of the song to make it artistically what you want to say. That stuff is hopefully the great leveler that brings everybody onto the same, like, you either like the backing track or you don't, and then you move on to something else that maybe gets you to react. But like, I feel like that's where the arts can play a role moving forward in this, is creating an open space for.
It's a way to bring people together without dividing them.
That's it.
Because a lot of the things that bring people together, like social media nowadays, it's like there is a narrative to divide people because it gets the most reaction, which gets some of the most ad revenue.
Yes.
Do you think that there is a responsibility we have as artists to pay attention to certain issues that are ongoing and address it in our way creatively?
I don't think it's I think the responsibility is innate by us picking our certain art forms. I think whether we like it or not, people look to artists for inspiration, for opinions and feelings and emotions, and I think that's okay, and that's part of the reason we do it, whether we know it consciously or not. So as long as we continue to develop art that reflects us as people, ideally the responsibility is then transferred to the listener by proxy without us having to shove it down their throats in any way, shape, or form. It's simply put out into the world for interpretation, and then that responsibility carries over to our listeners. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you feel like it's irresponsible for an artist to decide to just remain silent on pressing topics and just stick to what they're familiar with? Because I think that sometimes people expect certain people, if they have a platform, to pick a side on a pressing issue and say something, but I also think maybe certain artists that should not be where people are going to try to get their news from, or their
many
opinions
people
on
do go
social
to
issues,
that.
depending on the type of artist they are. They make party music or just fun music, that might not be the guy that you want to get your political commentary on, because if you ask them the question, they might give you something super ignorant, and then everyone will scrutinize them online.
But it's crazy
that
because
is not their
That person
job.
can influence millions and millions of opinions with no facts on whatever the hell is going on. They can just pick a side and say, this is what it is, and millions of people will follow that opinion for no reason.
I don't think it's irresponsible if you don't weigh in on certain things, but it would be irresponsible if that artist as a human being didn't follow what they believe in on their own personal page that maybe they only have close friends and family on or whatever. If they didn't feel passionately about the mistreatment of Indigenous people in Canada, I think it's okay if they don't pump that out in their artistic mediums of social mediums, but it would be irresponsible if they felt that they couldn't help the situation in any way, shape, or form, because you do have a certain power to make change.
For sure.
And so if you believe in that thing, then that is the thing that can guide you, and you as a human being may find a way to write those themes into a song and reflect it in a subtle way that doesn't scream that certain thing, and then you leave it up to your audience to interpret it. But you have done something, you have accomplished something by initiating that conversation. Yeah, I don't think it would be irresponsible unless you totally just checked out of everything altogether, and like, and, and like, that's not to say that there aren't kinds of music that people listen to on purpose because they want to check out.
Right.
You know.
Same thing with like stand-up comedy and
Yeah.
comedians.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's an important art form because they're able to sometimes take serious situations and find a way to make humor out of it, even if the situation isn't necessarily funny.
Mm-hmm.
That's the purpose of their art form, to make people forget about, just to kind of clock out for an hour and laugh and kind of think and make light of things if they can, you know. And
but if that
yeah.
comedian was purposely avoiding jokes about a certain topic, or wasn't looking to find a creative way to sort of bring that topic to the forefront that they're passionate about, then, you know, I would just like to hope that they're finding another way on a personal level
Right.
to affect
educate
change.
themselves,
Yeah.
or just contribute that is unrelated to their art.
Yeah.
Do you think that sometimes there could be a blurred line between like genuine support on important issues and then people that just kind of do it because they think it would make them look good on a brand level, where they're like, I'm gonna make a song about this because it's what everyone's talking about, and you know, I will get praise for it and some recognition, because that very well can happen, you know.
That's
like
true.
something that is an important issue, as a creative, you can analyze that issue, write about it, put out a song, and you can get some good coverage from that because it's what everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
But you might not be necessarily like
I guess for me,
part of the movement.
yeah, like, I guess I would have to, yeah.
That's my thing sometimes. I'm like,
I
I need to see the genuine.
I do worry about, shit, if I post this, are people going to think I'm trying to promote my art via this
Which sucks.
tragedy or
Genuine,
wildfire? It's definitely something I think about a lot. And then if I sit and debate it long enough, I come to the conclusion, well, I obviously feel passionately about this. How do I go about conveying this to people without initiating any kind of negativity, I guess is all I can really do. I worry about mixing political views with music, and I think it's because I worry about it that I'm doing it right.
True.
You know what I mean?
That makes sense, because if you didn't care about it, you wouldn't debate how people would perceive it for that amount of time before pressing a button to share your thoughts on something.
Yeah.
Because you would be like, this is not even worth my time debating this, so I'll just not post it, right? So
Exactly.
obviously you care. Because I noticed, like, you do articulate yourself very well on social media, on your Facebook, because I saw when you posted the photo of the additional welcome on the causeway.
Yeah.
And some people were like, oh, people are going to be mad if they take down Welcome to Cape Breton. And then you're just kind of like, elaborate further. And it was like, and people were applauding you on your not divisive and, trying to come from a perspective of understanding how someone might feel a certain way to say something instead of attacking them.
I personally feel that, we have a long way to go in getting over the wounds that were, that we inflicted. And when I say we, in the collective we, like, I mean our country, our various religions that many of us may or may not subscribe to. Like, I think we have a long way to go to heal that kind of thing, but it's definitely not going to heal if we're arguing and, like, at each other's throats. So I guess, like, by posting that, I thought maybe I don't need to put anything in the status of this. I'll just share it.
Right.
And then the comments that came from that, and there were actually there's a sub thread in that I didn't delete, but it got like pretty vulgar. It was a Facebook friend of mine who called me some names, and I just tried not to engage with that kind of negativity. I just eventually, when I realized they weren't trying to say anything of substance, that they were just trying to call me an asshole, just like comment like caps lock asshole. I was like, okay, like, you know, the obviously the dialogue has broken down here, and like there's not a lot more I can say other than like, hey man, like this is not like helpful. Will you delete this? Like, and then I feel like by deleting the whole thread, maybe anything that people could have learned from respectful conversation kind of just got lost. But
You kept it.
he deleted it, and I didn't have a choice in whether or not that was kept.
So that must have been what most people were applauding you for, your mature.
There might have been.
non-divisive
It
response.
could have been in reference
Yeah.
to a portion of that.
Because there was a few, but I didn't think that they were super, like attacking comments that were still there. So I feel like that might have been what people were referencing. Because I was kind of like, where is this? Because I remember like, good job, Colin, great, very thoughtful and,
Yeah,
and
there
calm
was-
response. But I was like, where is the?
There was
Where's the
one
beef?
that got a little bit. There was a spicy beef part there, like for a bit.
I love a spicy beef.
It was
Mashed
like,
potatoes.
Teabag.
okay, like yeah. Once the name calling sort of is all that's left. It's
Once
like,
the name calling comes into play, like you said, the dialogue's broke.
yeah,
we're not we're not
exactly.
debating anymore. It
Exactly.
became personal because you can't be mature enough to handle a
That's
a
it.
debate
That's
about a
it.
topic. You got offended because I'm not agreeing with you, or you're not winning the argument, and you're not. And that's the.
And
the problem
every
with
human
online,
has that. Every
100%.
every human has that ability to like take a step back and take a deep breath and go, okay, like why are we at this here today?
Right.
And like, and Facebook makes it so hard
But it's permanent,
to get
too.
in touch with
I
that
don't even-
side
I don't
of
even
that
use
rational
it,
side
dude.
of us. Facebook makes it so black and white and like, did you see this here fight
Twitter's like
today?
that too, man.
And it's like,
That's why I barely even go on. I haven't scrolled through Twitter in like 2 years.
Dude, like people were flipping because Jack Harlow was a straight white person on a song with Lil Nas X. Like, why do we need to put a straight white guy in here? Like, why does it matter that he's a straight or white or a guy? Like,
Yeah.
it could have been a
I think your
lesbian
question
Latino
is,
woman.
why did two artists collaborate?
yeah. Like, what the fuck does that
They're
even
making
mean?
music.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
they liked
are you
each other's
asking that
music and
question?
thought they'd make a good song together.
Yeah.
People think too deeply into stuff now, and they think that it has something to do with, like, they just overthink shit, and like it's just like, okay, just close your laptop or turn your phone off for a second, go for a walk.
Yeah,
You
man.
need to find some other way to work your anger out than like
Yeah.
shouting at people
Yeah, man.
online.
Go out in the garden, stick your shovel in the ground, and scoop up some dirt for a change. Like,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's an interesting alternative.
Gardening,
anything-
gardening is the
Just
shit,
some
dude.
dirt.
anything in 3D or HD, like yeah.
What are some interesting things about you that like people wouldn't know? Like, is there like an interest of yours that isn't necessarily like plastered out there for everybody to be aware of?
You like
that-
crochet mittens?
or, like,
Yeah,
do you play,
yeah.
Do you play squash?
No, I wouldn't call myself much of a. I guess like I'm definitely a lot less athletic than I used to be, but like I snowboarded for a good while, and I was a snowboarding instructor for a couple of years.
I can see this.
That's something that not many people know about me. And then like when I went off to college, my father started stealing my snowboard when like winter would roll around, and now it's like a thing we get to do for fun together, which is really cool. That I never would have thought we both would have had,
Wow.
that same interest to share. I feel like people probably don't know that I speak French, and I have a French teaching degree. I'm going to be taking on a 25% teaching position at École NDA school in Cheticamp this coming year. teaching music, and it's gonna be
En français. En
en
français.
français, c'est
Français.
ça.
Dude, I took I'll lose my mind. It's like
Francois, that's like a name,
Francois.
If
right?
you're en
En
français,
français. I was just in New Brunswick, bro.
Le
I was
French.
trying to be too.
Yeah,
I was
boy.
trying to be too French. En français.
nothing wrong with
Francois.
that, buddy.
Shout out to
It's
Francois.
all of the.
I took French core in junior high.
Did ya?
It's social studies and health. You would think that I would at least know how to pronounce the language.
the
properly,
French
but-
teacher's name here in Glace Bay, but there's a pile of Glace Bayers that went to St. Anne University and got teaching degrees. So like, it's something that I feel like super lucky that I stuck with, because I know when you're surrounded by English TV and everything, like there's not a lot of motivation for anybody to necessarily stick with a second language if you're not hearing it every day. But I feel like I've learned so much more musically and otherwise just by understanding the Acadian way of life and getting to know Acadian musicians. And getting to teach in Chatham is going to be a cool opportunity because there's a lot of talented kids up in
You
Chatham.
teaching music.
Yeah,
At what level? Like
all of them.
just like elementary to high
primary
school?
to grade 12. Yeah,
Interesting.
Oh, now you get to
Yeah.
teach the 4-year-olds with the fiddle.
that's right.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, there's going to
I'll
be
check it out.
some.
That sounds
yeah,
insane.
there's going to be some cool opportunities. Like, I don't know if I'll be as as a teacher. Because I've only ever substitute taught. So it was always the most flexible way to be a teacher around gigging. I feel like there's some big shoes to fill at this particular school where the music teacher that's outgoing has done so much work to.
Are they retiring or moving to a different school?
They're actually moving to their own private music school. Her name's Nicole LeBlanc, and she opened a private music school in Chatham called
Nice.
Ravestan Music School, and they're doing really awesome things in the community for getting kids fired up on piano, guitar, vocals, step dancing, fiddle, acting maybe too. So yeah, it's all good things that are happening there, and I'm not sure if I'll be staying past this year. It will kind of depend on what the gig landscape looks like next year.
Would that be
coming
hard
out
to
of COVID.
balance?
It could be a little bit tricky in certain spots, but they know what I do for a living before taking the job, and I kind of preempted the like. I was like, I'm gonna be asking for a bit of time off, and they seem to be okay with that. So, I think
They understood what they're getting into.
yeah.
Yeah.
But there's also like a bit of a stigma, like as soon as and Cape Breton's funny like this. They're like, oh, like heard you got a teaching job. COVID must have been rough, eh? So you're just never gonna play the fiddle again, eh? And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, no, you can do two things, and
Yeah.
it's also it's the same thing of like you've probably gotten this when you like in Cape Breton. It's hard to sell out a show until Cape Bretoners have seen that you've had success somewhere else.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if that place is Port Hawkesbury or Antigonish or Austin, Texas, as long as it's out
Yeah.
there.
It's like prove to us that you did it
It's
elsewhere,
like,
and we'll then
Jeez,
support you.
I seen you're playing down in Halifax, but like you're on the road all the time now, eh? And you're like, yeah, you know, like
I like last
Sure.
week, sure, it's like a 5-hour drive. But,
it's just.
but
a
to that,
funny-
well, to some, like, you know, it's just it's hard to comprehend because it's small town, especially you grow up with these people and they're just like
They
in
don't
your
probably
own
have
social
similar
bubble,
experiences
and then
either.
they just see you. It's like you must be super popular to like go somewhere else, and then people care enough to like go see you in Halifax. They're like, "Oh, my cousin lives in Halifax." They're like, "Oh, in the States, like you're like a millionaire now." Like, holy shit!
Yeah.
But it's just like
In the
people don't
music
understand.
industry, you can make tens of dollars by.
Ah, 10, maybe even 100. you know?
How do you feel like when COVID put everything on pause? I got out of the industry that I was into completely.
Yeah.
How do you think it's affected your approach to doing what you've been doing moving forward? Like you're taking on this teaching job. Is there any change? Like you said, you were on a real rough, like just going and scheduled. Do you think you're going to slow that down, or like is there a change in your approach now moving forward?
I think like before COVID, I definitely had the idea that ideally over time, as a musician, you don't want to be hitting it as hard as you can when you're younger, when you're older, because like you'll just
Wear
eventually
yourself
tip
out.
over
Yeah.
and you won't be able to do it anymore, or parts of like my arm from fiddling will give out or whatever. So the idea should be that you want to play a little less often over time for more, better gig pay, and that is something that can be achieved by like pretty meticulous organization, like attention to the admin side of business, and gradually, putting more and more value on your time as that experience allows you to. So I think now coming out of COVID, maybe it's kind of accelerated that process slightly. I still don't think I'm like in a position to be charging whatever Ashley McIsaac charges for a gig fee, because I don't think I've paid my dues as long as he has. But I definitely am interested in playing shorter gigs for better money that may involve some travel, but over time, hopefully, I will have more say over when that travel happens and for how long, you know? Like, my better half is a musician as well. Her name's Chrissy Crowley, and she's a super talented fiddler. And she decided during COVID to go back to school, but also keep gigging so that she could, down the road, gig as long as she wants and have a backup plan for when when or if she feels like pulling the ripcord, and just having those options kind of to fall back on that can still preserve your love of making music on your own terms. Over time, those are kind of the key goals I think I'll have going forward because of COVID.
And I think that's cool too to have a challenge outside of music specifically. Like I'm hopefully going to be going to a radio, television, like journalism course in the fall.
Nice,
Because I like doing this kind of shit too. Obviously, I like music as well, but it's like I feel like when you put so much energy specifically into one thing, sometimes you put a lot of pressure on yourself. And I don't want to be making music or performing with like constantly, like, okay, that song needs to reach more people than that one before. This show needs to have more people come out. It's like sometimes it could take away the joy from, the reason you started out doing it. Obviously you enjoy it so much along the way all the time, but I want there to feel like there's less pressure sometimes on just that in particular. And I think that's something that's admirable. It's like
Totally.
to be able to wear different hats,
And it's lucky that in music there are so many sort of branched off other options like broadcasting or teaching. Like you can do music teaching, you can do music broadcasting. There are all these, there's more than one route up the mountain, and you can always find these different options that maybe detour a little bit, but all to promote or you as a brand, or you as a multi-talented or multifaceted. Like there are a lot of people that argue that some of the really talented musicians that didn't hit it big, like there's one that comes to mind to me who is a super multi-talented musician on a number of different instruments, and people say like so and so should have made it big, but they never picked one thing to make that their thing that they were known for. And that musician like is so multi-talented at so many different things that because they never pigeonholed themselves in one of them, they never got famous. They spread themselves thinner instead of putting all their eggs in one basket. I think that's an old school mentality that's kind of going the way of the dodo, because you've got super talented hip hop like artists becoming producers or starting online workshop classes or going into broadcasting.
It's
And
more valuable to be multifaceted.
yeah,
Like,
it's better to have more like squid tentacles to
Yeah, and I
stretch
feel like
out.
if there's anything that you think that you might be good at, especially when you're young, like try it out and see, because
Yeah.
you're
if
still
you
looking
if you
for your
got
calling.
time, you might as well.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
just like if you think that you're good at this thing or that or whatever, like this was an idea. I was like, I listen to a lot of podcasts, listen to a lot of interviews, and I find an artist. I'm always like, we have great conversations when the cameras are off, and I'm like, imagine if we just turn this into something that we try to get better at, and then eventually have guests on that are interesting. And if we all hung out here, I'd probably be asking you the questions that I'm asking you right now. So it's like, might as well try to build something from it
Totally.
that I feel like isn't necessarily something that exists even like on the east coast of Canada right now. So
Yeah, man.
just anything like that it's just fun to create, really, you know?
Exactly.
What
Yeah,
I wanted
dude.
to do, where's my phone at here? We were talking about this before we started filming here. Was go through some of the song titles on your Spotify here if it decides to load, and kind of
Right.
get some feedback on
The stories.
the stories behind some of the titles. Of course, my Spotify's not loading right now. Is yours
All good.
working a bit here? Let's see if
Yeah.
we can get it. Hold on.
There's some wacky ones.
So,
Because, like, yeah, instrumental music doesn't, without, like, we were saying how with lyrics,
so just
when
any of
you
these, really.
name a song, like, you're naming it after something from the lyrics usually.
Right.
But with instrumental, it's off the head. Sometimes
It's just kind of, sometimes I guess it would have to do with like who's in the room. Or,
Who's
like,
in the
something
room,
someone
who
said.
you're
or-
thinking of, or a quote or whatever. Yeah, yeah. Fire away.
Very cool. Very unusual.
Those are tunes that we composed in a tune writing challenge in Scotland. Myself, Scott Mcmillan, the guitar player, and Mary Ann Kennedy, talented Gaelic singer from over there, who also plays harp. We had to write. We had like a English Town ferry length ferry ride. It was like 2 minutes long, and we had to write a tune on the ferry before we got to the other side.
Oh, that's crazy. So that's like a 7-minute. I was on that ferry yesterday.
Yeah, it's
So the Englishtown ferry to Ingonish?
Yes, yeah. So you had to wait until the ferry pulled out, and then start composing a part of the tune, and then by the time we got to the other side, we each had a part, and we squished them together to make the tune called "Very Unusual" and the tune called
that's
"Very
sick,
Cool."
man.
Yeah,
The self-titled album, Colin Grant,
yeah,
has quite some titles on this one here. In the first track, "Driver Like You Stole Her."
yeah. That's just yeah. I just like that expression. I think
Yeah.
I just named the medley that, even though there isn't like an actual tune. Like in that medley, there's probably like 5 different tunes that all have different titles, and sometimes you'll pick one of those as the title for the set. But "Driver Like You Stole Her" was just like, yeah, that was like a Cape Breton. I think it was one of the Celtic Colors Drivers Association members that may have told me that one. So yeah,
You got
it's a
one?
keeper.
There's a lady.
Oh, I was gonna do that one.
There's a lady is actually based. That is the name of a song that is written about Wendy Muse, who was really instrumental at the Savoy Theatre and she passed away sadly
Oh well.
a couple years ago. So I wrote a tune that was kind of inspired by the song. So it's an
Wow.
instrumental tune for Wendy Muse.
That's cool. Let me see another one here.
I like this last name, Bobby Cuthbertson.
Yeah, Bobby Cuthbertson. That's a pipe tune. Yeah. I don't know Bobby, but
Copyright.
yeah, he's. I'm sure he's a nice fella.
What about Funkin' Duncan?
Funkin' Duncan. That was the tune Duncan Johnstone, which is a pipe reel that Scott put some funk chords behind. So yeah, that's where Funkadunkin came from.
Little Sarah drove the Model T up Anthony's Hill. Little Sarah drove the Model T up Anthony's Hill.
That's I don't know how I didn't see that one.
So that one, that is like, that's
Sarah.
foolish. I think I was probably just trying to see how many words I could squeeze onto the back of the CD.
And then the next song's called Killy Cranky.
The bow and arrow set live.
So that one, like
who
the
is Little
super
Sarah?
long one, is like, that's 3 tunes in the medley. They're all jigs. The first tune is called Little Sarah's Jig, written by Dave Panting from Newfoundland. The second one is called the Model T Jig, written by Ashley McIsaac and my old fiddle teacher, Allie Bennett. And the third one I thought was called Anthony's Hill, and it's actually called Kimberly Ann's Jig. So I totally got the tune title wrong.
Kimberly Ann must
And
be
then
pretty mad.
Kimberly Ann ought to be, yes.
Yes.
I frigged up. Sorry,
Chicago Wildlife.
The same thing, bro. I was gonna say that.
Kimberly. That was a gig in Chicago where we checked in. I wrote a tune called Chicago Wildlife that's in that medley, and that was a night at a 5-star hotel in Chicago that came with these ridiculous like bathrobes that were like all like leopard print. So
Wildlife comes
we
in.
ended up having a party with these ridiculous leopard print bathrobes.
What about triplet clog?
Oh, that's what I was just at.
Sorry, you're like-
What's a clog?
A clog kind of tune, so it's like a jig or a reel, and it's usually kind of a fast, jumpy kind of thing. And Triplet Clog is the name of the tune by Dan R. McDonald, Cape Breton fiddle composer.
Thanks, Howie.
Thanks, Howie. Yeah, Howie taught me the first 2 tunes in that medley.
Who's Frank? Thank Frank.
Thank Frank. Frank Sampson.
Why
Gordy
was it
Sampson's
thanks
father.
for one and only thank for the other one?
Well, yeah, Frank was.
That's like
Well, one's in the moment, the other one's past tense.
one of them is a quote, the other one's an order.
Fair enough. Yeah, Frank Sampson is
You're not
Gordy's
thanking
father, and he my dad wrote a tune for him, and it's called Thank Frank, because he was one of the Celtic Colors drivers, volunteer drivers that helped put on the scholarship that paid for, in part, my first CD.
Literally
recording.
all good stories behind every one. You haven't been like, yeah, I don't know, I was having a few beer and I just thought that sounded funny. Like
Hey,
every one
right?
of them has
There
a
might
story
be one or
behind it.
two like that.
What's A right?
I write.
Or, I right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
I thought it was A-Ray too.
A right?
tune from Scotland written by Angus Grant called I Write, and he plays with a cool band called Shugal Nifty, which is
Google.
Does he have any? Is any relation between that Angus with Donald Angus who jigs?
no relation that I know of. No, Donald Angus Beaton was a fiddler from Mabu who composed a lot of great tunes, and his granddaughter Andrea Beaton, I don't know if you guys might know her name, we'll do a gig with her this coming weekend.
Oh, nice.
So those were 3 of his compositions.
A lot of shout outs in the titles.
Yeah,
Very loving.
Scott's 60th birthday waltz. That's for Scott McMillan himself.
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. What's so he's like, is he kind of he plays the guitar, right?
Yes.
Where did the relationship start with him? You guys kind of seems like you guys are very, very tight.
He's a pretty inspirational fella, and like as a both as a human and as a composer and performer, he has such a fun-loving approach to music that you can't help but be inspired by. And his wife Jennifer has worked so hard as well alongside him. They're like the dynamic duo to make
Inspiring.
a lot of music happen, and she's a librettist, so does a lot of lyric writing for some of the classical pieces that he composes the music for. So they're like a crazy awesome team.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's something I was going to actually ask you earlier as well. When it comes to obviously collaborating with other, instrumentalists, songwriters, etc., do you ever participate in the writing of lyrics?
No, not really. No.
Do you think you would be better than the average man at putting together or woman or at putting together a song?
It's funny. We got asked to do what do you call it? A commissioned song for McDonald's Canada recently, and I came up with some lyrics for it that I thought were like kind of corny, but that the guys who Mike and Steve, who are used to writing lyrics, were like, yeah, that's really good. I was like, okay, that's cool, but I really haven't contributed much in the way of lyrics. I feel like,
I mean, that's a good debut if you come up with a new
McDonald's
McDonald's
Canada?
jingle.
Shit.
yeah,
You take away ba da ba 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 with the Colin Grant bars.
I was gonna take that and turn it into a jig, like da da na 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 na, like
That'd be
a
really
little fill
cool.
tune.
You
out
should
of it.
talk about social media. You should make a TikTok and do a McDonald's jig on the fiddle. Post
Oh,
it up,
man.
guarantee.
That was a funny
Blow
gig,
up.
man. I was like, "Are we getting paid in French fries here, or what? How's this
That'd be
work?
not bad.
Some Happy Meals,
Couple
on
junior
the go?
chickens?
Yeah, bud.
How deep are we now? I know we've hit over 2 hours for sure.
Yeah, we're 229.
We're about to break the record. God damn it.
Speaking of that, I
So
noticed that
long-winded.
rapper earlier. None of us ate a McDouble, right?
No, that was here when we got here.
Okay.
Oh, that's a gift.
It was.
For you,
That's for me. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, yeah.
Your
Give
I
it a
went out
good
to
home.
pee before, and I'm pretty sure your brother was just in the garage by himself eating chips or something.
That sounds.
I
I'm not
just
surprised.
turned around, I just see him like,
which one?
Cole.
He has never ate chips in his life, so that's
it's not
actually
chips?
revolutionary.
He's eating something.
I swear to God, he has never eaten chips in his whole life. So if he's in there eating chips right now by himself, that would make sense because he'd be like, I can't have anyone.
He's hiding
He's been
the
exposed.
He hides the chip eating from
Low
everyone.
key chip addict.
At first, I was like, okay, that sounds right, and then I was like, no, that does not sound right at all. He's never ate chips in his life. He's 17.
eating
and
something.
the chips, it's coming. But
Ketamine.
before we wrap up, you've toured around the world and done a lot of shows and crazy. I guess you answered this. I got you. The craziest place, I guess, was Shanghai. But can you list off every country that you've played in? Out of just curiosity, I want to know.
Oh wow.
So like the furthest I would have gotten to go would have been Tasmania, and that was
That's where the
for.
devil's from.
That's where the devil's from. We got to see some Tasmanian devils. Funnily enough, like even less coherent than the cartoon version.
Wow.
Yeah, they're not at all like what I thought they would look like.
They're
But
just
it's
little,
probably
aren't
'cause-
they? They're like little tiny, like
Yeah, they're like tiny little, like they look like
badger things.
mini like bear cubs almost, but apparently they will like bite your fingers off. So they're like, do not like put your fingers. They're really cute looking. So like people apparently like go to pet them and stuff.
Probably
and
kind of
then-
like raccoons or something. They're a little aggressive
yeah,
if you get
but
in there.
it's apparently a lot more aggressive. Yeah, they were like, really do not go. Like this would be too close to put your hand on the other side of the fence. And it was like, oh,
So there's
okay.
a lot of them there. That's why they got that name.
They were in like a little wildlife preserve that we went and saw. Went to Belgium. Been to the UK. Into both England, Scotland, Ireland, and Northern Ireland. I'd love to go to Scandinavia sometime. See, like, I've never been there.
You've been to I'm keeping a
France.
list. So I got China, France, US.
Yeah, Indonesia.
I got 10.
And yeah, I guess that's pretty much all of them. Never been to South America or Africa yet to play. Got to fly through Dubai one time, and that was pretty cool. But
Cool.
How
Yeah.
how long ago was that? That's a rapidly.
that was on the way to
expanding
Indonesia, actually.
place. When did you go there? Did you say?
2007.
Oh, so Dubai was
Or
just
6.
like starting to really pop off. Like they've grown so much since then.
It was crazy. They had like we flew in, and they had those islands that are like
Those
the
weird-
palm and
yeah.
the world, and it's like
They
islands.
just completely abandoned that. They
Yeah.
just like threw that shit out the window.
They
They're like,
were
let's spend billions of dollars on islands, and then they're like, yeah, fuck those islands.
They definitely had money to burn on them. They
Yeah.
were just starting to like lay them out when we were flying, but it was crazy to fly over and see this like giant palm tree sticking out into the middle of the ocean and
Yeah.
little houses on it. Crazy.
Well, it ain't Cape Breton Island.
ain't Cape Breton.
2008 happened. They just threw that shit to the curb. That's insane.
Tough to top Cape Breton by.
Yeah.
No.
Anything else before we? I feel like we beat the record here. And
we went for the high score, man. I really enjoy getting to have this chat with you, man.
high five. I feel like this is
Deluxe.
one where we could go for 4 hours, but
Yes, spice.
don't want to
Deluxe.
keep you up too late. And
No worries. I had a wicked time. You'll have to come visit.
Wow.
We're right around the Cabot Trail in downtown metropolitan Margery Forks. So if
is
you're
that where you're heading?
That
back
sounds
to
like a
tonight?
made-up
that's where I'm
place.
heading tonight, yeah.
Oh, dude, we gotta get wrapped this up. Holy shit!
Downtown Metropolitan Marguerite Forks.
It's only a hop, skip, and a jump.
Yeah. Well, episode 18, wrapping it up. Colin Grant. Is there any social medias we want to shout out, or just look him up on YouTube or Facebook, Instagram? You'll find him, and Spotify.
Yes, bye.
Let's go. Yeah.